and lifting those temperatures well above average for the time of year, 16, 17 degrees. But there is quite a noticeable gusty wind. Quite mild even where the rain persists across Scotland and Northern Ireland well into this evening. As I say, if you are heading out to a firework display, that gusty wind might be quite noticeable, but you're not going to need to really layer up because it will be pretty mild. Apart from the odd shower, most of England and Wales dry. Still quite wet though across Cumbria perhaps, and outbreaks of rain lingering into this evening across Northern Ireland and especially across Scotland. Quite a wet end to the day across northern Scotland. Bit of a northerly breeze across the Northern Isles. That's the only place that's even remotely cool. Elsewhere, a very mild evening leading into a very mild night. The rain will gradually ebb away from Scotland, so things turning a bit drier. The breeze still quite noticeable, quite brisk, so that should stop too much in the way of mist and fog forming. But look at the temperatures overnight. Many places holding up in the teens and pretty much across the country. Double digits to start Thursday. So another mild day, another predominantly cloudy day. Not as wet across Scotland and Northern Ireland, but there will still be some outbreaks of rain, particularly coming into western Scotland. Bar the odd shower, again, much of England and Wales looking dry, but fairly cloudy. Some brightness coming through. Overall, a sunnier day likely across Wales and southwest England. And again, with the winds coming up from the south, it will be another very mild day.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. There's £30,000 in tax-free cash to make 2026 the best year yet. A further £10,000 cash to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £1,000 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag, and we'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to PMQs Live, here from the heart of Westminster, as we wait for David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister, who's substituting for Sir Keir Starmer today, to get up onto his feet. Delighted to be joined in the studio by the Labour MP for Hales Owen, Alex Ballinger, and the Shadow Science Secretary, Julia Lopez.
And we've just got a couple of minutes before we take you live to all the action. So welcome to you both. Julia Lopez, our Conservative MP. If I can start with you, what should your man, James Cartledge, is standing in for Kemi Badenoch today, what should he go on to really put the screws onto the government?
I think we're all still wondering what on earth the Chancellor's bizarre waffle bomb was about yesterday. So there's plenty of questions that stem from that. What's going to actually be in the budget? Why is Labour choosing to dip into people's pockets before doing any of the difficult things on welfare? So he might choose to go on that. James is also the Shadow Defence Secretary, so he might try and get a defence angle in there. They paused the vote on Chagos last night in the Lords, so he might choose to go on that. There's always an embarrassment of riches when it comes to what to target Labour on.
Now, I must say, before we get into more PMQs news, we've just learned from the Home Secretary that the migrant known as the Hokey Cokey boat migrant, this small boat migrant who came into the United Kingdom, was removed on the one-in, one-out scheme and then returned back to the United Kingdom. Well, he has now been deported. The Home Secretary said that one man tried to return to the UK after removal to France, but was detected by biometrics and detained instantly. His case was expedited and he has now been removed again. Let's get a response from the Labour MP for Hales Owen, Alex Ballinger. The Hokey Cokey migrant, gone.
I know, it brings this embarrassing incident to an end, but I think it also demonstrates that the system
is... I'm sorry, Alex, we're going to have to interrupt.
To the House of Commons, it's live. The Deputy Prime Minister's questions. David Lammy on his feet.
And the Earthshot Prize alongside His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales. Mr. Speaker, the thoughts of the whole House remain with those affected by the appalling scenes that we saw in Huntingdon and Peterborough, where I spent 7 years of my life at school. We thank our emergency services for their outstanding professionalism and the individuals who showed such tremendous courage to defend others. Mr. Speaker, this weekend is Remembrance Sunday. We will never forget those who fought to defend our freedom. It's been one of the greatest honours of my career to meet our troops around the world, whether in Cyprus, the Gulf or Australia. This week, the government announced the biggest renewal of armed forces housing in more than 50 years, kick-starting one of Britain's most ambitious building programmes in decades. This morning, I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I start by congratulating the Deputy Prime Minister on being the first black person to ever answer Prime Minister's question. A landmark moment for this place in our country, and I hope he is proud. Mr. Speaker, my 8-year-old constituent Phoebe is battling cancer, and her parents are fundraising to help with treatment costs and to raise awareness of Phoebe's condition. And people across my constituency have been moved by her story and have come together to raise over £122,000. So will the Deputy Prime Minister join me in paying tribute to Phoebe's inspirational bravery? And will he celebrate the incredible generosity and community spirit of Altrincham and Sale West?
Deputy Prime Minister. Well, it's very kind of the honourable gentleman to say that, and I'm conscious that my right honourable friend, the member for Hackney North and Stoke Newington, and indeed the leader of the opposition, are both trailblazers who've stood at this dispatch box, and it's important to recognise the progress that we've been made, particularly in the wake of Black History Month. I also thank my honourable friend for raising this issue. It's heartwarming to see a community rally around someone as brave as Phoebe. So I wish Phoebe, her twin brother Eric, and her parents Lindsay and Mark the very best in their fight against cancer.
Shall the Secretary of State for Defence, James Coughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I begin by associating myself and the opposition with the remarks by the Deputy Prime Minister about the terrible and horrific attack in Huntingdon. We wish a speedy recovery to those still in hospital and pay tribute to the brave actions of the public and the police. Now, Mr. Speaker, overnight, the father of the girl assaulted in Epping by Hadish Kabatu, the illegal immigrant, released by accident, said the government had failed them relentlessly. Now, I confess, I'm surprised the Deputy Prime Minister hasn't already apologised. So I'm going to give him an opportunity now. Will he apologise to the family concerned?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, it's great to see the honourable gentleman in his place. I had expected to see the Shadow Justice Secretary, but nevertheless, I'm pleased to see the honourable gentleman. He must have missed the debate, because in the debate, of course, I said sorry for the anxiety caused whilst Kabatu was at large, and I repeat that, and it's hugely important that Dame Lynn Owens now gets to the bottom of what has happened with her further investigation.
James Cartledge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Watching the interview last night, I have to say it was absolutely heartbreaking. And I have to say, Mr. Speaker, I do think he owes it to offer an apology here on the floor of the House. But he should have done that at the start of his remarks, Mr. Speaker. These are very serious matters, Mr. Speaker, which is why I want to ask him a further very important question. Can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, the House is thankfully quiet, so I'm surprised the honourable gentleman didn't hear me when I said that of course I apologise and I'm sorry for the anxiety caused. But look, let me just remind him that he was a justice minister that allowed our prisons to get to this state in the first place. And it's now for us to fix the mess that we've got into. It's important that Dame Lynn Owens can now continue her work and understand what is happening. He knows that early release has begun under their watch in 2021.
Mr. Speaker, these are extremely serious crimes that we are talking about. I'm going to ask him the question again. Can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison? It's a very specific question for him to answer.
Deputy Prime Minister.
After his release, I put in place the toughest checks we've ever had in the prison system. It is important that Lynn Owens is able to get to the bottom of her work. I suspect there'll be more checks and balances we need to do. What we inherited was a complicated system that they set up, letting people out on the sly. That's part of the problem, and we're trying to fix it.
Mr. Speaker, he's the Justice Secretary. He's responsible for the justice system. He needs to take responsibility, and I'm asking him a straight question. And I'm going to repeat it once more for the avoidance of doubt, because he didn't answer it twice. He's here to answer questions. Can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison? It's a clear question. Can he give an answer?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Get a grip, man. I know I'm the Justice Secretary. That's why I'm at the dispatch box, also as Deputy Prime Minister. We know that. I'm not going to pray in aid. Dame Anne Owens is a former Deputy Commissioner in London, head of the NCA. It is for her to get to the bottom of that work. Of course, we know that there have been spikes since 2021 under his watch. When did he come to this House and apologise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of government is to take...
I want to hear both. Quiet. James Cartledge.
Mr. Speaker, it's getting noisier now, so just in case he didn't hear me. He's the Justice Secretary. Can he reassure the House that since...
I will have no gestures from the balcony. Let me reassure you, don't gesture to me. It's not a wise decision. This is important. Prime Minister's questions, all our constituents are listening.
People in Epping and right across the country want to know the answer, Mr. Speaker. So I'm going to ask him again. He's the Justice Secretary. Can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison? Can he answer the question?
Deputy Prime Minister.
I've got to tell you, I spent 14 years in opposition and I did a hell of a lot better than he's just done. I have answered the question. Under their watch, prisons were in a mess. Suicides went up. Prison officers cut. 20,000 neighbourhood polices lost. We've deported more in the last year than they deported in the last 5 years. Please, I'm not going to take any lecture from the honourable gentleman.
Mr. Jewis and Mr. Stafford, you test my patience each week. Today's not the day to test my patience. We do have quite a bank holiday, so I certainly wouldn't want to be testing it at the moment. James Cartledge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The public are extremely concerned about what happened in the Kabatu case. They want to know there won't be a repeat. So I'm putting to him a very clear question about his responsibilities. I repeat, can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison? Can he answer the question?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm looking forward to being up against the member for Newark next time. In 25 years in this House, I've not witnessed a more shameful spectacle, frankly, than what the party opposite left in our justice system. Their criminal negligence on his watch as a former Justice Minister. They left our prisons on the brink of collapse entirely, threatening to allow offenders to run wild on our streets. He knows that. Rape victims waiting years for their day in court. He knows that. Neighbourhood policing decimated, leaving our people feeling unsafe in their communities, and they haven't learned a thing. We are tackling knife crime, that's why it's falling. 13,000 more bobbies we are putting on the streets, kicking out 5,000 foreign criminal offenders. I've got to say to the honourable gentleman, he should do better.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent, Georgia Hart.
What? I got it to 6. James Cartledge. Order. It is 6. All right. 6. You've had your 6. Sorry, I was correct. Jonathan Brass.
Mr. Speaker.
Jonathan Brash.
Mr. Speaker, my constituent, Georgia Hart, was 15 years old when she was diagnosed with Friedreich's ataxia, a cruel and degenerative condition that slowly robs a person of their mobility and independence. Since then, her courageous parents have battled day in and day out to raise awareness and money to get her the treatment she needs. There is now a drug, omavalaxolone, which has been proven to slow the progression of the disease. Yet despite this, it's been stalled by NICE, partly because the number of patients affected is judged to be above the limit for ultra-rare conditions. Georgia and those like her are being failed not because the science isn't there, not because the treatment isn't there, but because simply the numbers do not add up. Does the Deputy Prime Minister agree we cannot allow bureaucracy to stand in the way of life-changing treatment? And will he commit to ensuring that I, along with Ataxia UK, can meet the relevant minister at the earliest opportunity so that Georgia and her families do not lose more precious time?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, like the honourable member for Braintree, it doesn't seem that the spokesman can count, let alone stand up on behalf of the public. But can I thank my honourable friend? Our NHS has a strong record in delivering new medicines for rare diseases, and that evaluation process is rightly led by NICE. As I understand, the manufacturer of the new treatment for Friedreich's ataxia has withdrawn from this process. However, the door remains open for the company to re-engage, and I'm very happy to arrange a meeting that my honourable friend is seeking more broadly to help ensure everyone gets the care they deserve while investing an additional 29 billion in the National Health Service.
Daisy Cooper, Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of my party, can I join the Deputy Prime Minister in expressing our horror at the terrifying knife attack at the weekend and pay tribute to all those, including the emergency services, who put themselves in harm's way to protect others. And as we approach Remembrance Sunday, can I also join him in remembering all those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for our rights and our freedoms? Those rights and freedoms are now under threat in a way that we have not seen since the Second World War. Putin is waging war on our continent and interfering in democracies across Europe. The Chinese government is waging espionage against this House, and Elon Musk is inciting violence on our streets. To date, the government has failed to heed our calls for a new inquiry into Russian meddling, failed to place China on the enhanced tier of country threats, and failed to launch an MI5 investigation into the threat posed by Elon Musk. So can I ask the Deputy Prime Minister, what will it take for the government to act and protect our democracy?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I'm very grateful to the honourable lady. Can I just remind her, as Foreign Secretary, I stood at this dispatch box and I spoke to the China audit that we said we would do in coming into government, and we did that. I did it on the same day that we published our national security strategy, and of course my defence colleague has also published the Strategic Defence Review. She looks across all three of those documents. They set this country in the best place possible to face down the threats that she rightly refers to.
Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope the Deputy Prime Minister in his new role will consider our calls again. But right now, families across the country are struggling with a cost of living crisis, yet the Chancellor is preparing to increase taxes. Meanwhile, because of high interest rates and arcane Treasury rules to do with quantitative easing, the big banks are making billions of pounds in windfall profits that they never expected, that they never relied on, and never had to take any risk to earn. So without asking the Deputy Prime Minister to preempt the Chancellor's budget, can I ask the Deputy Prime Minister which he thinks is fairer, taxing struggling families or taxing big banks?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, she knows. We've got 80 years of convention, and it is for the Chancellor of the Exchequer to present her budget later on this month. But can I just say gently to her, it is under her government, in which they were in coalition with the Conservatives, that we saw austerity right across our country, and she will know that there are major parties proposing austerity again, and I know that the Chancellor will do everything she can to continue, as she set out yesterday, to invest in our NHS and our public services.
Tristan Osborne.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The leader of my local council, Kent County Council, has said that they're a shop window on Reform UK, with councillors facing criminal charges, inappropriate conduct and behaviour, a defection, 5 expulsions, a failed Doge cost-cutting drive, and an authoritarian leader who shouts and swears at colleagues. Does the Deputy Prime Minister agree with me that the people of Kent deserve so much better? And how is the government going to ensure that we deliver higher standards in local government?
Prime Minister.
I see the honourable member for Clacton in his seat. Reform said... This may be the first time I've seen him in Prime Ministers, but Mr. Speaker, Reform said that Kent County Council would be the best advert for what a Reform government would look like. They're delivering on the chaos that they promised and on standards in public life. I say to the honourable gentleman, no, Mr. Speaker, this is serious. I used to replace the honourable gentleman on LBC, so we've known each other for many years. The disgraceful, Racist language that we heard from a Reform MP last week belongs in the dark ages.
It feels like it comes around quicker every year, Mr. Speaker, because the 22nd to the 28th of November marks BBC Scam Awareness Week, and by sheer coincidence, the Chancellor has chosen that week of all weeks to deliver her budget. So given her previous broken promises on energy bills, on inflation and to businesses, can he confirm to the public that if they see something suspicious on tax at the budget, they should report it?
Deputy Prime Minister.
I usually look forward to the bombast that the honourable gentleman brings to the chamber, but as usual, the SNP will say anything to distract from their appalling record. In the week where Scotland's Health Secretary had to apologise for the state of the health service on their watch, he could have mentioned that in his question. We will see what is in the budget later on this month.
Charlotte Littles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know the thoughts of the whole House will be with everyone affected by the Huntingdon attack, and we should praise the actions of the train's driver, Andrew Johnson, and the heroic guard, Sami Zatuni. In my mind, a worthy candidate for consideration for the George Cross, as we wish him well in his continued recovery. Andrew Johnson told ITV News he was, quote, just doing his job. Will the Deputy Prime Minister take this opportunity from the dispatch box to recognise the importance of our railway crews, drivers and station staff, and the vital role they play in keeping us all safe, from averting suicides on the rail network to dealing with antisocial behaviour and emergencies like we've seen this week?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend. The actions of the driver, Andrew Johnson, and the train staff member, Sami Zatuni, were nothing less than heroic. And I'm sure that the whole House would agree that some form of recognition is absolutely deserved. Our country is defined by these people working on the front line, caring for and supporting the public every single day. I'm proud to be part of a government that's fighting for them, increasing their pay, tackling the cost of living crisis, and fixing the public services that we rely on.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And on Sunday and on Tuesday, we will honour those that made the ultimate sacrifice from not only this country but across the Commonwealth. Which is why I wear not only the poppy but the marigold to honour the Commonwealth troops that gave their lives. But next Sunday, the week on Sunday, will be the parade at the Cenotaph by the Association of Jewish Ex-Servicemen and Women, where Jewish people will come together. Veterans, men, women and children will parade with the medals that their forefathers won during World War II and the Great War and other conflicts. So it will be particularly apposite to this year, with anti-Semitism on the rise, that a senior cabinet minister comes to that parade and lays a wreath on behalf of this House and the whole country to remember the Jewish people that gave their lives for this country so we could all be free.
Deputy Prime Minister.
I'm very grateful to the honourable member for his question. I bought a new suit this morning because my godmother said she would be watching. But his question brings to mind the West Indies Regiment and their contribution in 2 world wars. And I'm very grateful to the honourable member for Sunderland South for ensuring that despite wearing a new suit, I've managed to put my poppy on. We wear the poppy to remember all those who fought and died for this country. They represented every walk of life, every race and every religion. My ministerial colleague, the Noble Lord Coker, will be proud to lay a wreath at the annual remembrance event at the Cenotaph to mark our enduring gratitude to generations of Jewish service personnel and veterans. And I'd like to thank Ajax for organising the event and for all they do throughout the year to keep alive the memory of Jewish people, many of whom are in my constituency, their descendants in my constituency in Stamford Hill, who gave their lives for this country.
Mr. Speaker, I'm regularly contacted by leaseholders and residential freeholders from across Ashford, Hawkinge and villages who raise concerns about rising property management fees, poor service and lack of transparency over what they are being charged for. As they already pay council tax, it is wrong they pay extra for maintenance of roads and green areas on their estates. Will the Deputy Prime Minister update the House on the actions the government is taking to reform the current outdated system so that my constituents can look forward to having stronger rights, greater powers and improved protections?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, for millions of leaseholders, the dream of home ownership has fallen woefully short of what was promised. That's why we're implementing the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act, providing homeowners with greater rights, power and protections. We'll bring the injustice of fleasehold to an end, protecting people from unfair costs. And as he knows, my honourable friend for Greenwich is going to meet the Director of First Port to address serious concerns over their performance.
Pete Wishart.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On Monday at the dispatch box, the Defence Secretary said the Scottish Government were a threat to national security. A charge repeated this morning by the Scottish Secretary. What he, in effect, was saying is that a democratically elected government, elected by 1.3 million Scots, possess a threat to this country. I don't know if it's something the Deputy Prime Minister will repeat at the dispatch box today, but can he tell me why democratic Scotland is a threat to national security and China is not?
Deputy Prime Minister.
I took a DNA test a few years ago. I'm 5% Scot. The people of Scotland are not a threat. They're not a threat to national security. It's the SNP. And they decide to get rid of nuclear deterrent that's a threat to national security. You should hang his head in shame.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is at this time of year that many of us think of those who have served their country and continue to do so. Those like my granddad who served in World War II and brought up my dad and my uncles in forces accommodation. Those like my nephew currently serving who sends me videos of accommodation riddled with black mould. So would the Deputy Speaker, the Deputy Prime Minister welcome with me the new Defence Housing Strategy announced this week, which will guarantee the end of the scandal of unfit forces accommodation? And will he guarantee to my residents in Stafford, Eccleshall and the villages, the 500 plus military families, that they will finally have accommodation fit for them?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I pay tribute to my honourable friend for championing our armed forces who make extraordinary sacrifices to keep our country safe. We are renewing our country, and that includes renewing our contract with those who commit the ultimate sacrifice. 4,000 military homes, that's 9 out of every 10, are going to be upgraded thanks to the $9 billion that we are investing, and of course that will include her constituency, homes fit for heroes, delivered by a Labour government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I echo the words of the member for Harrow East of how proud I am to wear the marigold alongside my poppy. Last year, Sadiq Khan was elected London Mayor with a promise to keep a police station front counter open in all 32 London boroughs 24 hours a day. Labour have just broken that promise to Londoners, as only 2 will remain. This year, the Met Police has 1,419 fewer police officers and staff, fewer people working hard to keep Londoners and our visitors safe. But in Sutton and Cheam, we've just had our High Street police team cut from 11 to just 4 officers, inevitably leaving my constituents less safe. So does the Deputy Prime Minister agree with the Liberal Democrats and Sir Mark Rowley that a shrinking Met Police force compromises their ability to keep Londoners safe?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, as he knows, the previous government cut police officers and PCSOs while also critically underfunding the criminal justice system. We're acting in London, funding the Met, Mr. Speaker, up to 262 million this year, and we're investing 200 million this year to put 3,000 more neighbourhood police on our streets by spring. Through our crime and policing bill, we'll also give them powers that they need, including enough tough new respect orders to tackle crime and make our streets safer. But I do just say gently to the honourable member, because he's a Liberal Democrat, they come to their feet, they ask for more funding, and then given the opportunity, they vote against the reforms that will actually grow our economy.
Laura Kirk-Smith.
Mr. Speaker, in Aylesbury I've been running a programme called Your Voice, Your Future to help young people engage with politics and shape the issues that matter to them. They've sent in ideas for the school curriculum review, they've advocated for better mental health support, and they've shared their fears about smartphones and social media. Will the Deputy Prime Minister join me in recognising the contributions and ideas of young people, and what more will he do to ensure that they can meaningfully engage in national policy?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, can I applaud my honourable friend? She's a passionate champion of the next generation. She will have seen my right honourable friend, the member for Sunderland South, launch her curriculum review, which will deliver high standards for every child, giving them the skills they need to thrive and boost their engagement in our democracy. And I'm proud that we'll also be giving 16 and 17-year-olds the right to vote in our UK elections to make their powerful voices heard.
Dr. Andrew Morrison.
Mr. Speaker, burning waste is as polluting as burning coal, and we already have incinerator overcapacity. So when will this government renew the last government's pause on new incinerators? When will it end perverse deliver or pay contracts with incinerator companies? And when will it deliver an incineration tax, like the landfill tax, to encourage waste reduction, reuse and recycling?
Deputy Prime Minister.
The honourable gentleman is very experienced. He knows that our country's future on energy is in renewables. That's why we're investing in renewables, and he should listen carefully to what the Right Honourable Prime Minister has got to say when he gets to COP. The Chancellor will have heard his observation in terms of further taxes. He's got to wait until the end of the month to see what happens.
Adam Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since this government has massively boosted the national minimum wage for young people, my constituents in Erewash earn far more than the £3.40 an hour I got paid in my first job just 17 years ago. What is the Deputy Prime Minister's response then to those, including the Conservatives and Reform, who claim that £10 an hour is too high a wage for young workers? And does he happen to know whether any of the Reform leaders' dozen extra jobs pay him less than £10 an hour?
Well, I was looking at the honourable member for Clacton's member's interests, and he's making quite a lot out of gold bullion. You've got to ask, why does he want to cut the minimum wage for people who are not making even 1% of what he is? The Labour Party's on the side of young people, boosting their wages and delivering the youth guarantee to help everyone realise their potential. And I hope young people recognise what the two other parties want on their record.
Dr. Ben Spence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. People across the country are fed up of extensive and needless delays caused by road, rail and utility works happening at the same time, a failure to coordinate. My Transport Duty to Coordinate bill would fix this and cut disruption, supporting communities and the economy. Now, I understand the government is looking for ways to support the economy, apparently. Would he pass on my proposal to the Chancellor and back my bill?
Deputy Prime Minister.
I'll certainly pass them on to the Chancellor.
Tom Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Seeing a dentist is crucial not just for people's dental health, but also for their broader health and well-being. But access to NHS dentistry has been a growing problem for a number of years. And in my constituency of East Worthing and Shoreham, only 2 out of 10 dentists are taking on new adult NHS patients, and the number is the same for children. So can the Deputy Prime Minister set out what this government is doing to improve access to NHS dentistry and to put a healthy smile on my constituents' faces?
Deputy Prime Minister. Minister.
My honourable friend is right to raise this issue. It's an important issue up and down the country. We're taking action to address the appalling inheritance received by rolling out extra urgent and emergency appointments across the country. We're also reforming the dental contract, recruiting more dentists and making sure that they work in the National Health Service for a minimum of 3 years.
Mr. Speaker, the inclusion of Oxford University Hospital Trust in the rapid review of maternity and neonatal services is welcome, and reports today in the New Statesman and Channel 4 speak to failures at that trust. Will the Deputy Prime Minister commit that the outcomes of Baroness Amos's review will be carried out in full, and commit to this House that the review is the start of a sea change in maternity services and not a whitewash?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Baroness Amos is a dear friend of mine, and I know that the Health Secretary is considering her recommendations.
Janet Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have seen Hurricane Melissa devastate Jamaica and leave the country in crisis. The Imperial College Storm Model states that the hurricane was unlikely without climate change. Now, I know that Prime Minister is at COP30 representing the UK against climate change, but I asked my right honourable good friend, the Deputy Prime Minister, if he will ensure that the UK leads the way on preventing climate change.
Deputy Prime Minister, you're right.
Well, I'm deeply saddened by the loss of life and the scenes of devastation in the great country of Jamaica. And like the honourable member, I have relatives in Jamaica, and I thank and commend my honourable friend for her personal fundraising efforts. The Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary have been in touch with their counterparts to offer our full support, with 7.5 million of aid funding already mobilised. We've chartered flights from Jamaica for British nationals who are unable to fly home commercially. Jamaica will also receive 71 million from the Caribbean Risk Insurance Pool, funding which begun under the previous Labour government that they can draw on for their renewal.
Rishi Sunak.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for joining me at a recent event in Parliament to support the work of Prostate Cancer Research, a charity where I am an ambassador. He and I both believe that introducing a targeted national screening programme for prostate cancer is the right thing to do and would save lives. So does he also agree that the recent compelling results of the 162,000 patient European trial support this case, and that this evidence, alongside data from Prostate Cancer Research and others, should be given significant weight by the UK's National Screening Committee?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I thank the right honourable member. Too many of us will sadly know someone affected by prostate cancer, and I have too many members of my family that are living currently with prostate cancer, which is why I'm very proud to co-chair the Prostate Cancer Research event this year and last year with him, and I share his determination to boost research, speed up treatment and deliver better care. Now, he knows I'm biased, but these are rightly decisions for the Health Secretary. The UK National Screening Committee is reviewing the latest evidence of prostate screening and considering whether any changes should be made to save lives. We've invested 42 million jointly with prostate...
Jenny Riddle-Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the past 15 years, there have been 170 cases of matricide, and in 2022, more women were killed by their sons than by strangers. Child-to-parent abuse is often linked to complex mental health, and earlier this year I met with Laura and Ian, who are doing all they can to support their son with his rehabilitation after serving time in prison. Mr. Speaker, they are living in constant fear of physical harm from their son, who they love and adore. Will the Deputy Prime Minister support me in meeting the relevant minister to discuss the effects of child-to-parent abuse?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Matricide is a horrific crime, and we're committed to tackling it. Our VORG strategy will set out how we will halve violence against women, including domestic abuse, over the next decade. And of course, I'll arrange for the Minister to meet with her.
Final question, Martin Vickers.
Mr.
Mr. Speaker, Lindsay Oil Refinery in my constituency is under threat of closure with the loss of hundreds of jobs. A number of expressions of interest have been shown in taking over the whole site. If one of those passes the test of due diligence, could the Deputy Prime Minister give an assurance that the government will back the project and allow the continuation of operations at the refinery?
Deputy Prime Minister.
I can't give him that assurance from the dispatch box, but I will, of course, ensure that the relevant minister meets with him.
A point of order, is it to correct the number of questions that I was right and you were wrong? I hope you're not going for a job at the Treasury. Come on then, James Cameron.
It's on a serious issue, I think, Mr. Speaker, just to be clear. The Telegraph are reporting that a police manhunt has been launched for a second asylum seeker mistakenly freed from prison. The question is, Mr. Speaker, can you advise me on how I can ask the Justice Secretary whether he was aware of this when I asked him about it repeatedly in Prime Minister's question?
Do you want to? No. You put it on the record. Right, let's just move on. Front bench change over.
That was Deputy Prime Minister's question time. You will have noticed that James Cartledge, standing in for Kemi Badenoch, used all 6 questions to ask whether it was possible that there were any other migrants who had, asylum seekers who had been wrongly freed from prison. Now, we were all in the studio wondering why that was, but it has now been reported by several news sources that a manhunt is underway for a second asylum seeker wrongly freed from prison, an Algerian man, 24, accidentally released from Wandsworth in South London today.
And we heard James Cartledge there in a point of order at the end of Prime Minister's questions, put that on the record, wrapping up this session of Prime Minister's questions. The first 6 questions asking David Lami whether he knew of anyone released. It didn't appear that he did.
We are going to go straight to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who has been watching the drama unfold from right inside the House of Commons. Catherine, I think as you've been running across to Westminster Hall, you will have heard about James Cartledge's point of order.
Yes, it's quite extraordinary, this, because before PMQs, I thought they'd probably talk about the budget, the cost of living crisis. In fact, it was only Daisy Cooper, the deputy Lib Dem leader, who mentioned that, saying which is fairer to tax struggling families or the big banks. But it was very curious, or so it seemed, the approach that James Cartledge, the Shadow Defence Secretary in place of Kemi Badenoch today, took with David Lami, the Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary. First, he asked about the fact that he had not personally apologised to the family of the 14-year-old girl assaulted by Hadush Kabatu, the man who was accidentally released a couple of weeks ago, hunted down and finally deported. David Lami said, well, I did apologise on the floor of the House. But then James Cartledge used all 5 remaining questions. I was writing in my notebook 2, 3, 4, 5. Can you reassure the House that no other asylum seeker offender has accidentally been let out of prison? David Lami was completely and utterly furious, and he did everything 5 times but answer the question. He blamed the previous government. He said it was shameful that the prison system had been left in the state that it had. And it left us all wondering why. What on earth was going on? What did James Cartledge know that we didn't? Or what did David Lami know? And we now hear, just in the last few minutes, in fact, that somebody else has been accidentally released. It's almost beyond belief. So now the whole of Prime Minister's questions make sense. There will now be a huge focus, and here we go again, a manhunt for a man who should not be on the streets. The other thing that struck me was there was the curious incident of David Lami's poppy, or rather David Lami's missing poppy. He didn't have one at the beginning of PMQs. Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, tried to pass him one. He managed to get one during PMQs, but rather embarrassing, just a few days from Remembrance Sunday.
Catherine Forster, thanks very much for all of that live from Westminster Hall. Well, let's get some breaking reaction now on that news that broke during Prime Minister's questions of this accidental release. Delighted to be joined in the studio by the Labour MP for Hales-Owen, Alex Ballinger, and the Shadow Science Secretary, Julia Lopez. Alex, before we get to any viewer questions, just your reaction to this, frankly, astonishing news.
I mean, it's, if it is the case and we're just hearing this breaking news, it seems to be a massive failure by the prison system again, only a few days after a massive failure with the release of the last asylum seeker. One person accidentally released is far too many. 2 people is clearly a big problem. I will say the system has been broken for a long time. Under the last government, there were 17 people accidentally released every month, so it's not a new issue. I hope the investigation that's been launched by the Deputy Prime Minister on the last case will fix some of these tougher regulations that have been introduced. They clearly haven't worked in this case, so we need to be looking very closely to ensure this doesn't happen again.
And Julia Lopez from the Conservatives. The Justice Secretary, he was in the chamber. We only learned about this a few moments ago. So he didn't know, presumably, and that's fair enough, presumably.
Well, it's classic calamity Lami, isn't it? And your viewers will have picked up that he refused very clearly to answer the question, I think, 5 times. He's put a lot of personal capital into solving this issue. It's only a couple of weeks. All he had to answer was he confident that in a couple of weeks there hadn't been any further releases, and he wasn't able to answer. And instead of actually dealing with that directly, he chose to sling mud, got very agitated in the chair. Now, I appreciate that these things are always...
Well, hang on, Julia Lopez, because he made the point. He says, we inherited a system from you, Lord, a prison system in absolute chaos. You wouldn't deny that that is the case.
We had a major prison building programme underway, and unfortunately, during the pandemic, that got hit. And so whilst we would have been delivering 20,000 extra prison places by now, unfortunately that did get delayed, and that is a challenge. But Labour's solution on this was early release. And they have not been able to get a hold on the prison system at the same time as they're not getting a hold on the borders. And this combination of factors is leading to absolute chaos there. And as I say, the Deputy Prime Minister placed a lot of political capital into getting this sorted. Apparently he hit the roof. He briefs out that he hit the roof, that this wouldn't happen again. And he was not able to assure people that there are not serious prisoners placing people in danger anymore.
Alex, we had a message in from Juna, who was listening intently to those first questions to David Lammy, and it was strange listening to it, because it felt a bit like Groundhog Day, just the same question again and again. Juna says, David Lammy, it's your job to know. Stop blaming others if you can't do it. Just say.
Well, of course, it's breaking news. None of us in the studio knew the details. It may well be that David Lammy didn't know the details because he hadn't been briefed yet. So I think he answered the question appropriately. Julia was talking about prison places. They built 500 prison places over the last 14 years. Our plan will build an additional 14,000. We built 28,000 prison places under the last Labour government. The reason the prisons are so overcrowded, the reasons we're having so many accidental releases is because of the failures we inherited. Now, we've launched an investigation. That investigation, I hope, should also look at this other disaster that's happened. Things clearly need to improve, but we are where we are because of the situation.
Why does a lack of prison places necessarily mean that there are accidental releases? I can see why it means that there's trouble in terms of finding places for new prisoners.
Yeah.
But why would a lack of prison places mean that people are accidentally releasing prisoners?
I mean, clearly, this is more than just prison places. So there has been a failure in the system at that point. But we have to look at it across the piece. We have overcrowded prisons. We have people that are stretched to the breaking point within the prison system. We hear that from everyone we speak to. It's not just the prison system. The policing system has been underfunded and under-resourced, and other public services are facing the same challenges. We're fixing it. This case is appalling. It's absolutely awful. I hope that investigation brings more resources into preventing it happen again. But we have to take into account the context as well.
Julia, you're fighting to get in there.
Well, no, I mean, everything that Labour does is making everything worse. And I go back to this as a borders issue as well as a prison issue.
On the borders issue, because there is some news that has broken on that particular issue today. The man who re-entered the UK by small boat after removal to France, and then he came back again. He has been deported this morning.
Laura, I mean, we're meant to be grateful that they've managed to deport somebody that should have not been here in the first place, and then came back again under a scheme that we're meant to be applauding.
But you cannot say that you left our borders in a secure condition.
This only happened because the Prime Minister's question's coming up, and there's probably somebody in the Home Office has gone, get this guy out of the country. The news broke at 10 to 12. If you want to get anything done in this country, you've just got to make sure that you have Prime Minister's questions looming, because that's the only time when anything happens in this country.
But to return to the breaking news that we have just had, first reported, I think, by The Telegraph, said, of course, by James Cartledge, across the dispatch boxes there in Prime Minister's questions. Wandsworth Prison, this sex offender has been accidentally released from. It seems that Wandsworth Prison has had a lot of problems specifically. This is the same prison where the accused Iraqi spy sort of clung on the back of a lorry and managed to escape during your time in power. I mean, this is a prison that's had a lot of problems.
Well, I mean, the prison system has been a challenge. I wouldn't deny that. This is why we had a major prison building programme underway. As I say, that got hit by the pandemic. That is regrettable. I'm not going to, walk away from that responsibility. And we were putting a lot of investment into it. I don't know enough about the cultural issues within Wandsworth Prison to be able to provide any detailed comment on that particular aspect.
Alex, what do you say about the borders here? Because, of course, perhaps there wouldn't be such chaos in the prison system if we didn't have thousands upon thousands of people arriving on small boats on our shores, going on, in many cases, to commit crime, to commit violent crime, to commit sexual crime, ending up in the prisons, and then being accidentally released. I mean, 2 of these people have now been accidentally released.
I mean, the borders are a serious problem, and our new Home Secretary that's just come in is taking a very hard line on the small boats and on illegal immigration
what does
generally.
That actually mean in practice?
We've seen, I think, an example of a success of the returns deal to France. The person that did come back was immediately or very shortly returned to France. That is a deterrent. People will not try it again. It costs thousands of pounds to make that trip. And this is on top of 35,000 people being deported, including more than 5,000 foreign national offenders. And there are lots of other things that the government is working very hard to reduce the number of illegal immigrants coming to the country. It's a lot of work to do. We're not done yet, but it's an important step.
So, Alex, to anyone watching or listening, what can this government do to reassure people that there are not going to be very dangerous people, more very dangerous people, accidentally released from our prison system? It's a threat and it's a danger to us all.
So this, of course, again, appears to be a disaster. The most important thing right now is the manhunt, that the police can catch this individual, this criminal that has escaped from prison. I'm sure all the resources will be given to the police in order that they can do that.
I mean, Julia Lopez, you can't ask for fairer than that, can you? I mean, David Lami does not run Wandsworth Prison.
Gloria, in the context here, where the Deputy Prime Minister, one of the most senior politicians in the country, was meant to have got a grip of something, you would think for at least the time that this issue was in the news, they would have everybody, all hands to the pump, making sure that there weren't any things going wrong. So this is a time when there is high levels of attention, official level, on this issue. And even in that context, things have gone wrong.
Well, it is extraordinary, isn't it, that the Shadow Defence Secretary knows more about what's going on in our prison estate than the actual Justice Secretary. How have we got to a position where, during Deputy Prime Minister's questions, James Cartledge, of all people, seems to understand more about the prison estate than David Lami, the man who's nominally in charge of the prison estate?
Well, clearly this was breaking news, and he had a tip-off from somewhere.
Nobody tipped off the Deputy Prime Minister.
I know, it's regrettable.
Well, hang on. Well, we don't know that. The Telegraph is a Conservative supporting newspaper. They may have tipped off.
I don't think they were the ones that broke it, actually. I think it was Sky.
Oh, OK. I stand corrected, but it is possible that journalists tip off. Tories. There are Labour supporting journalists.
Sorry, but where do the journalists get the news from? I mean,
exactly.
we all work in the media. We know how journalism works, right? You talk to people who are involved at the operational level. Someone from Wandsworth Prison will have told whichever journalist it was, and props to the journalist who decided the story.
But why on earth? Police, but who knows about that?
Why on earth has no one told the Deputy PM? Exactly.
Well, that is a question that none of us can answer, to be fair. But I guess a wider question, a more practical question is, what does happen to the person who is supposed to be running Wandsworth Prison? Do either of you have views on that?
Well, clearly something has gone badly wrong here, and I think there needs to be some accountability. It's not my role as an MP, but I hope an investigation will be done and the proper measures are taken.
Do you think that the problem is the person running Wandsworth Prison? Because I understand the previous accidental release wasn't Wandsworth Prison, it was Chelmsford Prison. So, I mean, ultimately, is there political accountability that needs to happen here rather than operational accountability?
Well, clearly there's a system that's not working. As I said, under the last government, there were 17 people accidentally released every single month during that 5 years, and that hasn't been fixed yet by the current Labour government. So we need to do a much deeper investigation and a complete change of the system. There was emergency measures that were released by the Justice Secretary after the last release. That clearly hasn't been effective. So we need to look again.
Could you just repeat those questions? Those figures, because I want to ask Julia Lopez if she accepts the figures that you cited under the last government. Did you say
17 persons every month were released unintentionally during the last government?
Do you accept those figures? Do you recognise those figures?
I'm afraid I don't have the number. I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
So it happens. It happens, which comes back to the point that David Lami made, that our prison system is in crisis. It was a crisis that they inherited.
Well, Gloria, we had a major prison building programme underway, and what Labour has done is effectively say, well, let's actually have early release for some very serious criminals, and that would...
Come on, that was going on under your government.
Well, as I said, we had the major prison building programme underway, which got hit by a pandemic. It would have delivered by now if we hadn't had that. I don't want to try and make excuses. I'm just telling you the reality of it. And Labour's response to that has been to have an early release programme, which is releasing some extremely serious criminals onto our streets. And that's not the option we would have taken.
There'll be people screaming at the television now that one of the fundamental problems here is that these aren't our criminals. These are people who are coming into the country who we didn't need to let into the country. We didn't need to put up in a hotel in someone's local community for only them to then go on and commit some sort of heinous crime that ends them up in a prison. Many people will have been thinking, why weren't these people immediately detained and immediately deported?
So the Home Secretary has been very clear on foreign national offenders, and we have sped up the process for deportations. Now, I think that's the right thing to do.
Not everyone that people have been deported under the one-in, one-out scheme?
So under foreign national offender deportations, it's more than 5,000 people have been deported.
Those aren't small boat migrants, though. In terms of small boat migrants who've been... Yes, but they will have come in many, many different ways. Many of them will be living here for years and then go on to commit a crime. 5,000 have gone. People will be concerned that we're getting on for 40,000 small boat migrants this year alone. It looks like it could be the highest year ever of small boat arrivals. And there have been many recorded cases of those small boat migrants then committing crimes. I think I'm right in saying that it's less than 100 or around 100 who have been deported of the almost 40,000. I mean, that is a pitiful number.
It's part of a package of measures. And, of course, the returns deal to France is a pilot deal. We're just getting it started. We're proving the concept. Each month, more people have been returned than the previous month. I appreciate it's not enough. 2 people were returned to Rwanda. They had to be paid for the privilege.
But it was a deterrent, and, you know, it's reported that you are looking at alternative countries for
we are. We're
processing.
We're looking at alternative countries that can work, and Rwanda...
That was ready to go, right? And then you did the same when it comes to accommodation as well, where now you're realising that actually you do have to look at military barracks. And there's the thing, Labour has effectively... I've asked Yvette Cooper this very question in the House of Commons, how many of the small boat arrivals have actually been deported? And you never get any answer. What they're trying to do, they're taking the low-hanging fruit when it comes to deportations and using this to have a figure for the overall number of deportations. We're completely ignoring the fact that they're not doing anything to solve the small boats crisis. And we know that we're on record levels now of people coming over, and there's just no progress here.
So I reject the fact that we're not doing anything about the small boats crisis. The Borders Bill that's going through Parliament at the moment has strong new powers for the police. It allows us to go after people that are advertising illegal jobs. It goes after people that are advertising on social media crossings. It allows us to use counter-terror powers against the people smuggling gangs. That is on top of the work we're doing with the French and the Germans on the continent to go after the boats. You will have noticed, I hope, that in the last 2 weeks there haven't been any small boats crossings. Now, that might be the case because we've done a lot of work over the summer to put these measures into place.
The wind speeds in the Channel have been very, very high over the course of the last 2 years.
If you compare it to recent years, there were lots of crossings in October and November. And we have had no crossings in the last 2 weeks.
What are the figures for the
There have been many
year?
days where the wind has been too high.
So the highest year in terms of crossings was 2022 under the last government. We're not on track to beat that at the moment.
so far. If neither of you can get a grip on this, your government and now your government, isn't it inevitable that we will see neither of your leaders in number 10 in 4.5 years' time? It will be Nigel Farage, because arguably, what does he have left?
What is his plan? I mean, this is the problem, isn't it? I mean, these.
But if they say, well, we tried this lot, it didn't work. We're trying this lot. We don't know if it will work.
It will work.
But if it doesn't, do you accept that if you don't sort this problem, if you don't secure our borders, it is absolutely ludicrous, and people will think, OK, we're not even in control of our own borders. Somebody else, a different leader, a different person and party needs to be in number 10.
I don't accept we can't solve it. I don't accept that we're not doing everything we can to reduce illegal immigration and keep our borders secure. I talked about some of those measures. The numbers are coming down. That pilot scheme is improving. And deportations are much higher than they were under the last government. On asylum hotels, which is a disaster, we have roughly half as many as we had under the peak of the last government. So things are moving in the right direction.
Most of that decline did come under the last government, though.
And we have a new plan to put people into military accommodation, which, as a former military man myself, I think is a much more appropriate place for asylum seekers to be.
Thank you so much, both of you. We stuck, and thank you to everybody who has messaged in, actually. I know we didn't get to talk about some of the things you wanted to talk about, but on tax and spend, and Rachel Reeves' speech in particular, but we did want to get the reaction and keep you informed about that breaking news. And to give us even more of that, political correspondent Catherine Forster is with us to bring us the latest.
Yes, it's absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? I think we're all expecting a PMQs about the economy, instead of which the Shadow Defence Secretary, James Cartledge, asked David Lami, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Justice Secretary 5 times if he could reassure the House that following the release the other week of Hadish Kabatu, no other asylum seeker that had been an offender had been accidentally released from jail. Now, 5 times he asked the question. It was the same question over and over. It's very unusual for that to happen. David Lami said all sorts of things, got absolutely furious. I mean, he was livid. He was saying this is the fault of the previous Conservative government. It left the prison system on its knees. Early release started under the Conservatives as well, and so on and so forth. He said a lot of things. He did everything except one thing, which was answer the question. Now, of course, we were all wondering, what does James Cartledge know? What does David Lami know? And then at the very end, a point of order, James Cartledge then reveals the reason for these questions, and that is that yet another asylum seeker who has been in prison has been accidentally released. It really is almost beyond belief. Now, the Met Police have released a statement. I'm going to read that to you. And a Met Police spokesman have said, shortly after 1300 hours on Tuesday, the 4th of November, the Met was informed by the prison service that a prisoner had been released in error from HMP Wandsworth on Wednesday, the 29th of October. And the prisoner is a 24-year-old Algerian man. Officers are carrying out urgent inquiries in an effort to locate him and return him to custody. So there's lots of questions coming from this. There is a lobby briefing going on between the Prime Minister's official spokesman or the Deputy Prime Minister's official spokesman right now with political journalists. We're trying to get to the bottom of what David Lami knew and when. Did he know, when he didn't answer that question 5 times, that in fact somebody else had been released in error? Or did he not know? I mean, it was very, very curious that he didn't answer. We don't have the answer to that at the moment. But there's a couple of things. First of all, this This release, Wednesday the 29th of October, it was only 5 days after Hadish Kabatu had been released by mistake. And he, of course, was the asylum seeker in Chelmsford who had been jailed for assaulting a 14-year-old girl. A 14-year-old girl who is deeply traumatised, whose family spoke to broadcasters last night. They're very upset they haven't had an apology from David Lami. And also, this happened 2 days after David Lami had announced enhanced checks on prisoner releases. Those checks clearly have not worked.
Just astonishing news. Catherine Forster, thanks for bringing us the very latest there from the heart of Parliament, where, of course, we first got an inkling of this disastrous second accidental release. And welcome to Good Afternoon Britain.
Welcome.
My name's Tom Harwood.
And I'm Nana Akua. Welcome. Good to have your company. But interesting that the questions, when I was watching Prime Minister's questions, I was wondering, why is he focusing on this one question? Why is he not talking about the economy? Why is he not... This is why. Yeah. Because I think he would have clearly known about this. And I suspect if he knew, David Lami, in my view, must have known, because he kind of evaded the question repeatedly. And if you didn't think there was and you were certain about it, you would say no.
I think it's clear David Lami didn't know.
Do you think?
I think David Lami didn't know.
But he didn't ask the question.
Well, that's the most extraordinary thing. He wanted to obfuscate because he didn't know, and he was caught off guard. And this is the most extraordinary thing. To my mind, the Justice Secretary there didn't know what was going on in his own prison estate, whereas the Shadow Defence Secretary did. What mismanagement?
Either that or he did know and he obfuscated deliberately. Well, let's get some more, because joining us now is GBNews' national reporter, Charlie Peters. Quite extraordinary, Charlie.
Totally extraordinary, Nana and Tom. But in fact, in a way... Because in 2024 to 25, 262 prisoners were accidentally released, almost double the figures from the year before, when 115 were released from 2023 to 2024. It's just perhaps now that there has been such a focus on it since the accidental release of Ethiopian asylum seeker Hadish Kabatu, who sexually assaulted a woman and a 14-year-old girl, that there has been more focus on it now. So we're seeing at a rate about 5 a week, Tom and Nana, of these sorts of errors. But it's particularly embarrassing for the government, of course, because David Lami said that they had introduced the toughest checks ever in reaction to the accidental release of Hadish Kabatu from HMP Chelmsford. Now, this new prisoner release, an Algerian, has come at HMP Wandsworth. Now, that prison has been mired in controversy for years. It's a Victorian prison which has long struggled with overcrowding and other such crises. It's also one of the very few prisons in recent memory to have had another form of accidental release, with an escape in the last few years of Daniel Khalif, who was at the time on remand on suspicion of terror offences. What you're seeing now is the front entrance on your screen to HMP Wandsworth, that Victorian prison. There are reports of it suffering greatly due to the overflow of drugs in the system, of violence as well, but also reports of, in some of those Victorian cells, having 2 prisoners at a time stuck inside them. Now, the Metropolitan Police, we understand, was only informed about the accidental release from HMP Wandsworth at lunchtime on Tuesday, that's yesterday, despite this 24-year-old Algerian being released from that prison in South London on Wednesday last week. So a manhunt is now underway for this 24-year-old Algerian, which of course comes less than 2 weeks after the Epping migrant sex offender Hadish Kabatu was himself accidentally released as well. With the Metropolitan Police telling us in the last hour that shortly after 1 p.m. on Tuesday, November the 4th, the Met was informed by the prison service that a prisoner had been released in error from HMP Wandsworth on Wednesday, the 29th of October. The prisoner is a 24-year-old man of Algerian nationality. Officers are carrying out urgent inquiries in an effort to locate the man and return him to custody. Now, it's been reported that he was imprisoned, having been convicted for trespass with an intent to steal. However, this Algerian prisoner, like Hadoush Kibatu, it's understood that he has previously committed sexual offences. There will be a lot of confusion now, Tom and Nana, about that gap of a week between the release on Wednesday and the Metropolitan Police, which of course is the jurisdiction over South London, only being informed that an offender was at large yesterday afternoon. Now, 262 of these accidental releases from March 2024 to March this year, over double the 115 from the year before, and the Deputy Prime Minister, David Lami, making that commitment that the toughest and most stringent checks have been introduced since that Ethiopian migrant sex offender was released at HMP Chelmsford just over a week or so ago. He said that the strongest release checks that have ever been in place were introduced. He also ordered that independent investigation being led by a former Deputy Commissioner of the Met, and that's Dame Lynn Owens. But you can see why Mr Cartledge asked that question at PMQs 5 times. I think it's clear that they knew something that perhaps the Labour front bench didn't.
Charlie Peters, thank you very much. We will keep you updated. Of course, it's breaking news. And our Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, has now spoken out following this revelation that a second foreign offender has been wrongly released and is now on the run. Ms Badenoch said James Cartledge asked the Deputy Prime Minister 5 times to tell us if another migrant sex offender had been accidentally released from prison. Instead of answering, Lami lost his temper. Now we read it has happened again, and he's been on the run for a week. This is a shambles of a government.
Now we're just getting some further news in from our political correspondent Olivia Utley. She's been speaking to the Prime Minister's official spokesman. Now, after every Prime Minister's questions, the lobby journalists there in the House of Commons rush off to the sort of annexed room in the press gallery there and ask questions of the Prime Minister's official spokesman about the exchange. And of course, this was the main topic of conversation, this second migrant accidentally released. Now, the Prime Minister's official spokesman said this, direct quote reported by our very own Olivia Utley: "I've had the Met statement, otherwise I don't know more than you guys. The facts are being established." So that's the line from the heart of number 10, that they're saying they don't know more than the journalists in the room. Just staggering levels of lack of communication or lack of competence.
But when did they get the statement then? When did they get this? They said they don't know much more than us. But somehow the Conservatives knew about it. So my question is, when did they get this statement?
Well, we'll be pleased to know that the spokesman also said he has total confidence in David Lami. So that's the same total confidence he had in Angela Rayner, the total confidence he briefly had in Peter Mandelson. Yeah. But my goodness me, it seems as though all the journalists knew just as much as the number 10 team, and number 10 kept referring the journalists to the Justice Department. This is the very opposite of joined-up government.
I think they knew about it. I think they covered it up. The Metropolitan Police obviously didn't want to announce this at the time. They say they knew on Tuesday, but the previous week this person had gone missing. Maybe Wandsworth President perhaps didn't inform the police because of all the furore over Hadoush Kibatu, but still, I think the government knew before the Prime Minister's questions.
Well, I think we're going to learn a lot more about this in the coming hours. But let's speak now to the former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley. Peter, this is just astonishing news. I mean, it's unfortunate to accidentally release one sex offender illegal migrant. To accidentally release a second one, it looks like beyond carelessness.
Good afternoon and welcome to the latest sorry instalment of Laughing Stock Britain, because that's really the depths we've plumbed now. This is, of course, a ludicrous situation that should never have occurred, and the irony just minutes after David Lami, the Deputy Prime Minister, stands up in the House of Commons, thumping the dispatch box and saying he has put in place the most strident, strict measures to ensure this kind of release will never happen again. And guess what? It has. Only this time, this convicted prisoner has got a 6-day head start on any police who are going to try and find him.
Peter, when you were sort of actively working in the service, was this a common phenomenon that prisoners would just escape or be accidentally released?
No, it was a rarity. I never heard of such a thing happening during the 21 years that I served. And as Charlie Peters pointed out, Wandsworth Prison has got a very checkered past. The conditions in there are apparently appalling. And as he pointed out, Daniel Khalife escaped from there in 2023 by hiding underneath a lorry. So this is yet another stain on the tattered reputation of that prison, but it's also an absolute shambolic indicator of just how poorly our criminal justice system is being run.
Many people will be asking, what happens now? Because, of course, David Lami trumpeted enhanced checks just days ago. This is supposed to be the new, refreshed release system, and yet now we learn, after he announced those enhanced checks, we learn that someone else has been accidentally released. I mean, what on earth?
Pretty much directly afterwards as well.
When hunting a fugitive, imagine that there is an imaginary piece of string between fugitive and the officers trying to find that person. What you want, of course, is to rein them in, for that piece of string to get shorter as the timescale between the latest movement of that fugitive gets closer and closer and closer. And eventually that piece of string shortens to the point where you lay hands on that person and take them back into custody. This is a very, very long piece of string because he has a 6-day head start. This could be incredibly challenging. He could be on the other side of the planet for all that we know. But in the early stages now, the police will be examining all intelligence databases. What do they know about this man? Who's his contacts? Does he have any family, for example? And where can they try and pick up that thread and shorten it?
Well, he's probably gone back to where he said he's probably fleeing persecution from, so that's probably the way it is. But Peter, if we look at the prison service, how come, if it's true that they took so long to inform the police?
Yes, that's another very important question. And if I were one of the police officers tasked with trying to find this man, I would be absolutely livid at the amount of time that it took for the police to be informed. Is it yet another indicator of a system that doesn't work? Or was there some sleight of hand going on here? Were they hoping to try and rectify the situation one way or another before finally having, with huge embarrassment, no doubt, to having to go to the police and say, oops, we've let out another one?
I mean, the most extraordinary thing about this is we have hard enough trouble trying to keep tabs on our own homegrown criminals.
Of course.
To then have people come in as bogus asylum seekers, and I think I'm completely at liberty to say bogus asylum seekers. There's no war in Algeria. Algeria isn't Ukraine. These people aren't fleeing for their lives. They're moving to a place of greater economic opportunity. Now, you might say that that's a rational thing to do economically for that person, but you might also say, why on earth are we facilitating it in so many ways and putting these people up in hotels and letting them in? But let's get to the point here. Ultimately, we could have had a more rational, controlled system on our borders and not let this criminal in the first place.
Essentially, the modern policing model was established some decades ago with a view to being of a size and with a capability to do with our own homegrown British scumbags. And that's how it was set up. In fact, the entire criminal justice system was set up to deal with our own rogues, vagabonds and criminals. But now, of course, we have such an influx into the UK of people who are largely undocumented. We don't know where they've come from. We don't know what their backgrounds are. We don't know what their intentions are. And, of course, that adds to the police's workload and the workload of the entire criminal justice system, which is, in some part, why it is all creaking, if not crumbling, at the seams.
Peter, if you were to put a percentage on the likelihood of his recapture, 100 being obviously the most likely, what percentage would you give it?
Well, I'm not a gambling man, and to be perfectly honest with you, Nana, it's a bit of a trick question. I'm damned if I do and damned if I don't. This will be made more challenging by the fact that he's had a 6-day head start. Although conversely, what might happen is if he's not been given assistance, because to stay on the run for any length of time, you need a network. People who are going to feed you, clothe you, put a roof over your head, transport you around, wash your clothes, all those kind of things. If he's managed to get into a network that could keep him safe, then he could be on the run for a very, very long time.
Now, of course, what happened with Hadash Kabatu was that his picture was plastered across every paper and TV channel in the country. In the end, it was with the help of eyewitnesses that he was caught. Do you expect that we will be seeing photographs of this particular Algerian 24-year-old so-called asylum seeker imprisoned? Will there be a public campaign to try and catch him?
As a matter of public safety, we should be made aware of what he looks like and where he used to frequent and any kind of addresses that he might have visited. Because Kabatu was captured fairly rapidly, within 48 hours, of course, by the great British public. All right, the police put the handcuffs on, but it was the public that found him and dialed 999. Now, if this prisoner, this Algerian, has not got a network, then in all likelihood, he's going to be rummaging around in bins for food or stealing food. And if he commits other crimes, that might bring him to notice. But at the moment, we know so little about him. We need to know more, because otherwise, I'm really, to be perfectly frank with you, just speculating as to what may or may not happen.
Ironically, obviously Hadash Kabatu wanted to go back, so he realised he had to try to go back into prison. But this one will like to probably get as far away from the UK as possible. If we find somehow that he's escaped, should we just leave it at that? Because we don't want him here anyway.
Well, we have to be very much aware of the fact that we have an open borders policy and that people rock up on our beaches, either with the assistance of the Border Force or in dinghies, at will, without being immediately detained, which they should be, because anybody who comes to the UK without leave to remain commits an offence under Section 3 of the Immigration Act 1971. So they should be detained. I don't care how many miles of razor wire and how many snarling outstations we need to keep these people under lock and key until they are rightfully deported. Sadly, under this lamentable and the previous pathetic government, that's not happened. And as a result, every man, woman and child in the UK is a little bit less safe than they used to be.
OK, well, Peter Bleksley, thanks indeed for joining us on this breaking news story. And just to reiterate, this is the story that a second migrant, a second criminal asylum seeker has been accidentally released, this time from Wandsworth Prison.
Yes, he was released last week on Wednesday. We only found out about it on Tuesday, or the prison informed the police then. Of course, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has now spoken out following the revelation that a second foreign offender has been wrongly released and is now on the run.
Yes, this is what he said. Another dangerous criminal is on the loose thanks to Labour. What a total farce.
Well, let's just remind ourselves of the breaking news. If you've just tuned in, 21 minutes after 1 o'clock. This is Good Afternoon Britain, and a manhunt has been launched after a second asylum seeker was mistakenly released from prison just days after a sex attack migrant went free. And this comes after James Cartledge asked the Deputy Prime Minister 5 times to tell us if another migrant sex offender had been accidentally released from prison.
Well, of course, James Cartledge, the Shadow Defence Secretary, was the man who asked David Lami about this time and time again. But let's take a listen to the moment this news was announced, just at the end of Prime Minister's questions.
Mr. Speaker, just to be clear, the Telegraph are reporting that a police manhunt has been launched for a second asylum seeker. mistakenly freed from prison. The question is, Mr. Speaker, how can you advise me on how I can ask the Justice Secretary whether he was aware of this when I asked him about it repeatedly in Prime Minister's question?
Well, joining us now is human rights lawyer David Hay. David, so we hear that a second asylum seeker has now been accidentally released or escaped in some way. It seems abhorrent that the prison service didn't inform the police until Tuesday. Just talk me through the likelihood of that. And do you think there's any chance that actually perhaps there was some sort of concealing of information because of what had gone on previously with Idris Kubati?
Good afternoon to you both, and apologies for smiling at the beginning of this, but yeah, it's very, very serious, but it's beyond comedy. I mean, let's remind ourselves the first duty of the government and the Home Office is to keep this country safe and us as citizens secure. So, do you or does anyone listening and watching this feel that they're safe and secure? I certainly don't. I think this is unprecedented failure on the part of the Home Office and the government. And normally you would expect, you would expect heads to roll, Home Secretary to resign, but there's no one better. So I think, and I think, as you said, Nana, it's very concerning. Why did it take almost a week? If a prisoner escapes, a prison in a populated area, why are they taking a week, if that's true, to alert the authorities? Why? That is very, very concerning. Apart from the fact that obviously this is the second time it's happened that we know of. There may be more that we don't know about. So I think so many questions. And I think, the trust and confidence that we need to have in our government, in our prison service, and in the Home Office, is it there anymore? It's certainly not, as far as I'm concerned.
David, to many people, it feels like this country is simply falling apart, that the centre cannot hold, that there is so much calamity in almost every different element of this. Why was this person in the country in the first place? When he got in, why wasn't he detained? Why wasn't he immediately deported? Why did he go on to commit a crime so serious he ended up in HMP Wandsworth? Why on earth was then he accidentally released from HMP Wandsworth? Why did the Deputy Prime Minister appear as if he did not know about this a week after it happened at Prime Minister's Questions? Why was there the delay before the prison service told the police, told the Deputy Prime Minister? Every level of this, every solitary level of this scandal seems like failure after failure after failure after failure.
Absolutely, Tom. The country, I think, is broken. And I think the government, the government has shown that they're not able to fix it. Things break. There's problems in government departments all the time, but things can be fixed and things can be mended. And I think the problem that we've seen with this government is that for whatever reason, whether it's capability, whether it's lack of communication, they don't seem capable of fixing certainly the Home Office. And the previous government has shown that they can't do that either. So what is the solution? The solution is largely, I think, it's, and as a human rights lawyer, I didn't think I'd say this, but the solution is even more looking, I think, like Nigel Farage.
Really? And what about the ECHR? Because the issue we have is even when we do catch these people, they're then able to use one of the different articles to say they have a right to a family life, or to say they're going to be persecuted if they return because of the crime they've committed. Even here in this country, they'll be persecuted back there, or they don't like the chicken nuggets, or even if they're a paedophile, their child has a right to have a father in their lives. It's just astonishing.
I think we're a long way off even looking at the ECHR at the moment. If we can't even keep hold of prisoners and we keep releasing them, we need to control. Again, I'm smiling, but we need to control our prisoners first. We need to control our borders. We need to get the Home Office doing what it's doing. Obviously, there are issues with the current law that we have that comes from the European Convention and the interpretation of that do cause us problems when it comes to deporting people. Like you mentioned, we have ridiculous cases like the chicken nugget cases. That's not what human rights laws were put there for in the first place. They were there to save people's lives and people that are suffering persecution, not someone that doesn't like a particular chicken nugget brand. So I think we need a whole-scale reform.
But that's my point. If they couldn't get here in this way and use all of that, then they probably wouldn't bother. But the fact that they know that they've got so many protections and there'll be taxpayer-funded lawyers even to keep them here, and they can appeal again and again and again. They know that coming to this country is a safe bet, and they also know that if they commit crime, we're unlikely to do anything about it. It's just a shambles.
It's an absolute shambles. I mean, I think, you know, people will still come here. They've been coming here for a very, very long time. You know, people will obviously come here to go through the asylum system, whether they're genuine asylum seekers or not, because they understand that they're, you know, that's very lucrative for them. They get put up, but also people come in illegally all the time. You know, a few months ago, there was a boat found coming across from France into Falmouth with illegal immigrants on that didn't want to be found. They wanted to go into the black market of labour. You know, so that's happening a lot. And I think with this other chap that's basically been deported, the kind of the okey cokey migrant that came in, went back, came in. What you'll see now, I think that won't stop people coming, but what they might do is rather than coming across the channel, look for other routes to get in under the radar this time, because they'll realise, well, actually, we might get sent back if we've already been sent back once, but we'll now look at other ways to come in. And obviously, we're an island. We've got a very large coastline.
Well, this is the most important point that I think gets often forgotten in all of these discussions. The 40 or so thousand people who've officially come across by small boat, those are the people that the Border Force has picked up, has processed. They're not the people who've rocked up on the beach. They're the people who've been picked up midway through the channel and then brought to shore, brought to port securely by the British Border Force and then processed in the asylum system. I mean, we don't know the numbers of the people who've not done that, who've, as you say, have washed up in Falmouth or on a beach without detection. I mean, by very definition, we don't know those numbers.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, when I trained in immigration law, which is a long time ago now, probably about 20 years. I mean, the big problem then, and I think the main problem still now with the numbers, is overstayers, whether that's students or people coming as technically tourists and then going into the black labour market, because we don't check them when they come out. So if someone comes here on a tourist visa, they go straight into working in the black market. When they decide to go home in 6 months, 12 months, a few years, no one checks them going out, so they can come straight back in again. These, I think, are the big numbers, and that's one of the big problems. So yes, the channel is a huge issue, but the big numbers are people overstaying, whether it's tourist visas, whether it's student visas. That is an area that we really need to stamp down on, and there doesn't seem to be much attention on that because it's not that. You know, it's not very press-worthy at the moment, but there's huge problems, and the government, I think, has proven that they simply cannot deal with them.
All right, David, hey, thank you very much. He's a human rights lawyer. Really good to talk to you. Do you know what? I'm actually sick to my back teeth of this. And what infuriates me more is listening to members of the Labour government saying, oh, well, you know, because of the last 14 years, at what point will they acknowledge and accept some sort of responsibility for this? Because the numbers of escapees have doubled during their time in office. So they now need to start being accountable. And every time they obfuscate and blame the previous government. So will it be 2 years when they're in office? Will it be 3 or near the end?
Well, we heard those numbers directly from Charlie Peters at the start of this show. 115 accidental releases in 23-24. That was under the previous government. And clearly far too many, 115 too many.
Bad.
But 24-25, so under this government, 262. More than double.
Exactly.
Extraordinary numbers.
But they were left full prisons that weren't working and blah, 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 blah. It's just, I wish, I mean, even Rachel Reeves going on about everything else is not her fault. It's all Brexit, it's COVID, it's the last government. It's, I'm really, really sick and tired of hearing it. I'd like to hear what David Lami is going to do about it, and I want to know whether he knew about this before he stood up there and refused to answer that question 5 times.
Yeah, it does seem obfuscatory at the very least. But surely if your argument is we're a new government and we're fixing things, you'd expect things to get better, not to get worse. People might absolutely give you the benefit of the doubt. Things aren't going to be perfect in year 1, but you'd expect improvement. And instead of improvement, we've got deterioration.
Well, things are going to get worse before they get better. Remember, they said that.
Oh, yeah.
They're fixing the foundations. I'd like to fix them into the foundations. Seriously.
Well, shall we speak now to the Reform UK Prisons Advisor, Vanessa Frake. Vanessa, thanks so much for being with us here on this extraordinary day of breaking news. I want to ask you the particulars. What will have happened here? How does someone get accidentally released? It sounds almost farcical.
Tom, I wish I had the answer that you and the rest of the country needs on that. But unfortunately, I don't. I don't understand how it took them 5 days to work out that they'd released one in error. I don't understand how David Lami doesn't appear to know. I don't understand how David Lami stood last week and said he's introduced this 5-page document that was absolutely rock solid and wasn't going to happen again. You know, I think it's a poor, shoddy result for our prisons, for our government, for our country. And it gives absolutely no confidence whatsoever in our justice system to the public.
Well, Vanessa, when you were, working and in charge of prisons, would this have happened on your watch? And what is the process when someone is accidentally released? Because these people would have known that somebody has been accidentally released. So what should they have done? And how did they manage to withhold this?
Well, I honestly don't think, Nana, that they would have withheld it intentionally. I do believe that the checks that are made after somebody is discharged, like their record is put away, it's gone through on the computer, and I do believe that it was probably picked up then, and that might not have happened for a good couple of days. I don't believe that the prison service, it would have been suicide to withhold it, particularly after the debacle of the release in error from Chelmsford. What part of me feels sorry for Wandsworth, because Wandsworth has gone through some dreadful times with the escape of Daniel Khalifa, the sex tapes of a prison officer with a prisoner, and again now this. And I think that it's a systematic failure of our prison service right across the way. Wandsworth is a Cat B jail. They have a huge volume of prisoners going through the gates, coming in and coming out. I'm talking 200 plus a day. Each one has to be identified and checked. So I presume that it was the sentence calculation that was wrong. Since this government's brought in the 40% of sentences and the 30% for deportees, it's made the sentence calculations much more difficult. And I'm not sure that the prison service has got their head around the sentence calculations.
This is just one of those things where people are going to be wondering, yes, there are high-profile cases now. I mean, 2 migrants who have been accidentally released. But last year, I mean, we've been discussing this all programme, 262 accidental releases, 24 to 25, 115 the year before under the Conservative government. I mean, why are we having triple-digit accidental releases in this country?
Well, I think, Tom, you have to look at the prison service as a whole. I don't think you can just blame it on the release in errors. I think you have to go right the way back to poor staffing, high turnover of staff, inexperienced staff, lack of training, poor dilapidated buildings like Wandsworth. And I think all of that encompassed staff under an enormous amount of pressure with high volumes, overcrowding. And I think that all of that plays a part in it. But what I would say is that 262, that is a jump of 130%. And nobody, the MOJ, the government, whether that's Labour or Conservative, picked that up. Surely somebody should have looked at those figures and said, what is going on? And looked at it then, before all this happened.
It does feel like all this sort of rotating of people in charge of different departments is partly the reason why we're in such a mess. But it would be the same civil servants looking after it, so it just seems a bit of a mess. But so how do you think this could be fixed? Because you've been in the service for a while, you have expertise. If you were in David Lami's shoes and having to fix this problem, what would you do?
Well, I think the only way to go about it, Nana, is to go back to basics. Go back to vetting, go back to training, go back to selection of staff, go back to support of staff, get rid of the foreign nationals that are stuck in our jails, blocking up 10,000 beds. I think something seriously has to be done. one little thing of a 5-page checkout that David Lami came up with is going to fix it.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things where people are pretty astonished at just how many foreign-born national offenders are actually in our prisons. Many people would be suggesting that if someone is foreign-born, they migrate to this country, they break the rules of the country they choose to come to, however they choose to come here, it seems almost elementary that they should be removed.
Absolutely. But, you know, we've got the wonderful thing called the ECHR. And the only people that are making money out of that are the human rights lawyers who will battle for 2 years or more on every single one as to why they can't come back from whence they came. And also, it's not easy. A lot of countries don't want to take them back. It's also like they haven't got documents to say what country they're actually from. And again, countries don't want to take them back. It's an absolute political nightmare, the whole thing. But it's been allowed to get like this, Tom. And now people are starting to take up and sit up and take notice. And you know, my thoughts are that I hope nothing happens with this guy who is now MIA.
Well, Vanessa Frake, Reform UK Prison Advisor, former prison governor herself, thank you very much for joining and talking through this breaking news. And just to reiterate this breaking news today, we learn an active manhunt is underway after a second migrant offender has been accidentally released from the British prison system, this time from HMP Wandsworth.
All right, well, joining us now is GBNews political correspondent Catherine Forster. If we don't laugh, we will cry.
Yes. I mean, it would be farcical. You would laugh if it wasn't so incredibly serious that we have a convicted criminal on our streets. It's one of those things. When we had the story, you know, a couple of weeks ago of Hadish Kabatu, the man who had sexually assaulted the 14-year-old girl, being accidentally released, you couldn't make it up. It's like the one in, one out. That had been, the man deported back to France, had then come back. You couldn't make this stuff up, and yet it's happening and happening over and over again. Of course, throughout Prime Minister's questions, we were all thinking, what on earth is going on? Why is James Cartledge asking 5 questions on this? What does he know? And then at the very end, of course, we learn the reason why. What we haven't got to the bottom of at all, and our colleague Olivia Rutley was in the briefing with the Prime Minister's official spokesman, is who knew what when in government. They sound like they've pretty much been totally blindsided. It sounds like Number 10 didn't know about it. We don't know yet whether David Lami knew about it or not. It was very, very interesting. I was fascinated, as I've noted in my notebook, 2, 3, 4, you know, his response each time.
I can see the number 5 you've written has been written over and over again.
Every time he was asked the same question, can you reassure the House that no other asylum seeker offender has accidentally been let out of prison? He gave all these different, very, very angry, I thought he was livid, responses, fundamentally saying this is the fault of the Conservatives' 14 years of underinvestment in the prison system. And we know it has been hugely neglected, because when money is tight, as it was in austerity, you know, and it is again now, people care about getting doctor's appointments. They don't look at people being in jail. We take it as a given that if somebody is dangerous, they're going to be locked away and they're going to stay there. But it seems that is not the case. Now, we know this is a foreign national offender. We know that it came just 2 days after David Lami announced these enhanced checks, supposedly, on prisoner releases, which were designed to stop a repeat, and yet they didn't. And we also know that there was a gap of nearly a week between this happening on Wednesday, 29th of October, and the Met Police being informed on Tuesday, the 4th of November. So what was going on in that interval? But, you know, huge reaction. Nigel Farage has said another dangerous criminal is on the loose thanks to Labour. What a total farce. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has said it's shocking that once again the Labour government mistakenly allowed a foreign criminal to be released from prison. The Algerian offender reportedly has previous sex attack convictions and is clearly a danger to the public. Now, reports suggest that he was jailed this time for trespass with intent to steal, but we do know that he had previously committed sexual offences. So, absolutely horrendous. The government will blame the Conservatives for the state they've left the prisons in, for sure. But I think there are very big... I mean, the thing is, it's past the parcel, isn't it? Yeah. The prison system has been on its knees for a long time. This government have the misfortune of being in power when it's all exploded. But they are in power. They are the government. It is their job to get a grip.
But they were in opposition for 14 years. So they would have seen, and they should have been able to have a look at what's going on within the different departments, prisons and so and so. And it was their job to challenge the government on things that were being mismanaged. They didn't.
Well, I mean, they would say that they challenged austerity, of course, but I think this is a nightmare for the government. You know, we've seen they got that huge majority just over a year ago. They have plunged in the polls. They're being overtaken by, it's unbelievable now when you look at the polling and that of the Prime Minister personally, that he is the most unpopular Prime Minister, you know, for the last 50-odd years. They need this like a hole in the head. But this is very serious because the government's first duty is to keep its citizens safe. Now, clearly, that is what prisons are for. People are being let out. And I think there is a very valid question, and actually something I asked the Prime Minister months and months ago, are they failing to keep us safe in the English Channel? Because people are coming across, we don't know who they are. Many of them might be good people, of course, but there will be some that are here to do us harm.
Well, I mean, it stands to reason. I mean, this man, we don't know if this man is a small boat migrant at this stage.
Well, I think we don't. We've been steered towards saying that he's a foreign national offender. I think originally the reporting was that he was an asylum seeker. We're waiting for clarification on that. So at the moment, it's not clear.
Foreign national offender. But you say that he had previous for sexual offences, but was in prison this time for trespass with intent to steal. So, I mean, this is multiple... this is more hokey-cokey with the justice system from a foreign national offender.
That's what's being reported. I mean, obviously, this is a huge breaking story. More details are going to emerge. But you think, you know, when we had the story of the man who'd, you know, assaulted the 14-year-old girl, and, of course, her family gave her, you know, they're devastated. That child is traumatised. David Lami, the Justice Secretary, has said, look, I've apologised in the House, but has not personally apologised to that family. He is let out, and lo and behold, we're a couple of weeks on and it's happened again. But then you hear that actually there's dozens and dozens and dozens of people being let out in error from our prison system. It's actually not as rare as we would like to believe.
Right. Well, Catherine, stay right there, because the Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy, has made a statement. He said, I am absolutely outraged and appalled by the mistaken release of a foreign criminal wanted by the police. The Metropolitan Police is leading an urgent manhunt, and my officials have been working through the night to take him back to prison.
He continued, victims deserve better and the public deserves answers. That's why I've already brought in the strongest checks ever to clamp down on such failures and ordered an independent investigation led by Dame Lynn Owens to uncover what went wrong and address the rise in accidental releases, which has persisted for too long.
This latest incident, it continues, exposes deeper flaws across the failing criminal justice system we inherited. Dame Lynn Owens' investigation will leave no stone unturned to identify these issues so we can fix them, improve safeguards and ensure the public is properly protected.
Well, let's get a reaction now from our political correspondent, Catherine Forster.
So there's some lots of very interesting words, but it says, my officials have been working through the night to take him back to prison.
So he knew.
So his officials knew last night.
But did they brief him or not?
Of course
so we still don't know that. It would seem to me to be extraordinary, given the amount of attention, given how horrendous this is for the government, if they hadn't told the Justice Secretary. It would explain why he did not answer. If he did know, as would seem likely, we don't know for sure, but would seem likely, I think there would then be questions when he was asked very directly 5 times by the Shadow Defence Secretary why he didn't admit.
Withholding information from the House is a serious issue.
Is that misleading the House? Can it be seen as that?
Well, it's only misleading if he directly denies something, and the thing is, he obfuscated, he didn't deny.
He didn't answer. He didn't answer, but he was asked the same question, and James Cartledge said, I'm going to ask you again. I'm going to every time exactly the same.
Do you think he was hoping that it just wouldn't come out? Do you think he was casting a bet, hoping that maybe he would be caught in the next couple of days before any journalists got their hands on the story?
You would imagine so. You would imagine so. I mean, I don't have know what's been going on, but also I think it was really interesting. The Conservatives didn't say who was going to be doing deputising for Kemi Badenoch. They didn't want to say who it would be. They said it quite late, who it was going to be, I think to try to sort of wrong-foot the government. And they've obviously done that very successfully because James Cartledge clearly knew all along. That's clearly why he did what he did. So I think there's very serious questions now for David Lammy. He said that his officials have been working through the night. That doesn't mean that he necessarily knew, of course. I would think it would be very surprising, though, if they hadn't informed him.
Well, he did at the beginning of Prime Minister's questions seem surprised that he was dealing with James Cartledge as well, and he made a comment about that. So, no, I think he knew. I think it's quite obvious he knew. I think I win that bet with you. I think I do.
Just quickly, Catherine. The Conservatives have been pretty blooming good at Prime Minister's questions the last 2 weeks. Last week, they wrong-footed the Prime Minister asking the same question that Kemi Badenoch asked at the start of the summer on getting him to commit to not raising taxes, and he refused to do so. And this week, this sort of strange strategy that no one quite understood until it was later revealed. I'm frankly quite impressed with the research that goes into the side of the Conservatives now. It
does feel like things are improving dramatically in CCHQ. Kemi Badenoch...
That's the Conservative campaign headquarters.
Yes, sorry, using jargon. Yes, I completely agree. Kemi Badenoch, we've been pretty critical. I mean, it's our job as journalists. Hasn't always been the strongest at holding the Prime Minister to account. Of recent weeks and months, she's got significantly better. Angela Rayner, Peter Mandelson, really forensic. And also, there's been very damaging stories for the government, some of which seem to have originated via the Conservatives. And I had a sit-down interview for GBNews with Kemi Badenoch yesterday. And it just feels different. And the team around her, I was talking to some of them afterwards, and they were saying that the difference in how they feel back at Conservative headquarters to how they felt just a few months ago. They're feeling much better. They seem to be, in a better place, and they think they are beginning to have cut through. Of course, they're still languishing in the polls, but...
Yeah, but Kemi Badenoch feels as though she's got them in check. She's got them in check, and I think her front bench are quite impressive, actually. All of them with experience, all of them quite credible politicians, and that's something that Nigel doesn't have in Reform UK.
I suppose the question is, did it all just come too late for them? Now they've got their house in order, but perhaps the country's moved on.
Yeah, we forgive them.
Big questions. But, Catherine, we'll be back to you later in the show, of course. Let's speak now for the moment to the former Met Detective Superintendent, Shabnam Chowdhury. Shabnam, one of the most extraordinary things about this story is the lack of communication between the prison service and the police and the Justice Department. I mean, is there just a fundamental breakdown in this sort of communication?
Good afternoon to you both. I think that focusing on the first two aspects, the prison services and the police, there seems to be a clear breakdown there. It may well be that the prison services haven't actually realised until yesterday what has actually happened when they've gone through their basic checks and processes in terms of the release of prisoners, and then they informed the police at the earliest opportunity. In respect of letting the justice system know, I know I was watching Prime Minister's questions today, it did seem very, very awkward. And in my personal view, either David Lammy really wasn't on board with what had happened or was even informed. There seems to be a three-way process that just hasn't been linked in together. But what this does do in terms of the police manhunt for this, makes it really, really difficult for police to be able to locate this individual. He's had exactly an entire week. Now, if he knows that he's been released by accident, then by all accounts, he should have handed himself back in. But it all depends on what the paperwork said and whether he should have been, just released. And, it depends on what it says on the paperwork. But to have some form of a timeline from when he was actually released to today's date is going to be like finding a needle in a haystack for the police.
It seems extraordinary that it would take almost a week to fill in some release document or whatever they do. And now David Lami said that he's brought in the most stringent controls ever. Won't that take even longer?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that David Lami saying last, when this all happened with the other escapee, the serious sexual offender, he'd said that he put some stringent systems and processes in place. Clearly, somewhere along the lines, that hasn't worked. So what we have to also remember that there are prison officers who are supervisors, who are managers, who actually run the show, who should know what they're actually doing. And you would have thought they would have crossed their T's and dotted their I's, given what's happened in the last couple of weeks and the high-profile case in respect of that escapee. This isn't anything new for the prisons because of the fact that in the last couple of years they've had something like more than 250 prisoners released by mistake or on error. So it just makes the job of the police in respect of this individual, there's probably others out there outstanding that they haven't caught up with in the past year or so, very, very difficult. In respect of Kabatu, they had a timeline and they had a very short window of opportunity to try and capture him, which they did a very, very good job of. But in respect to this individual, he could be anywhere. And I think, as Nana was saying, he might have deported himself. We don't know. We really don't know. And unless there's some photographic evidence of him put out in the public domain that he is now a wanted person, the public are not going to have a clue who he is or where he could be. And if you're talking about somebody from a particular background, he might have immersed himself in communities where there is a bigger demographic of Algerians or people of, a particular background where he can just hide away carefully. And I think the only other way that he could potentially get caught is if he's caught out shoplifting, trying to steal food or committing some form of a criminal act where he'll get arrested in any instance.
Well, it does seem as though he's had at least, perhaps 2 brushes with the law in the past while he's been in this country. It's simply extraordinary that he's now being let out after what we have reportedly heard as sexual offences and subsequently trespass and intent to steal. But I think a lot of people will be worried about what this... sorry, go on.
So I would say trespassing with intent to steal is either he's gone into a place where he's been barred. For example, he may have gone into a shop where he's barred from shoplifting, or it's some form of a technical burglary where he's not supposed to be somewhere and he's tried to go back in there. But that's probably the offence that they've used. So he's probably well known to the local area that he was living in, and he's a persistent offender of some sort, whether it's sexual offences or whether it's criminal, theft, stealing, shoplifting, something like that. However, you would think within that period of a week he may well have come to notice, but that clearly isn't the case.
Just quickly before we let you go, I mean, if someone's a persistent offender and they're a foreign national, I mean, if they've why? I mean, is it a 3 strikes and you're out policy? I mean, why at least 2 different brushes with the law and he's still in this country?
Well, with a persistent offender and somebody that is a migrant or somebody that is seeking asylum, for example, they would need to be convicted of a crime and then sentenced to a prison sentence of 12 months or more, like the other one. So if he had been convicted for 12 months, he could have been subject to a deportation order. Obviously, we don't know the circumstances in respect to this individual, but there are strict criteria around it. Personally, I think that they should do the whole, what you just mentioned, 3 strikes and you're out.
I wouldn't even give him 3. Shabnam Chowdhury, thank you very much. He's a former detective superintendent. Do you know, I just think it's just astonishing that I think as conditions of visas when people come to this country, we should be negotiating with the country that we allow the visa from, that if your citizen commits a crime, they will be sent back, and that is the only way that we'll allow your country to have visas to come to ours. This is negotiations that the Foreign Office should be making with other countries as a condition of enabling the other citizens to come to this country via visas. Absolutely. I would have thought that's quite obvious, and that would be what I would do.
Yeah, but I think the problem is a lot of people don't come in with visas. They come in as tourists and then overstay, or they come in as illegal migrants without any paperwork whatsoever.
But that would be all part of the deal. I'd negotiate that also if people come to this country illegally from your country, if you don't accept them back, then we will stop giving visas to you.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing.
That should be all part of good negotiation. Donald Trump has been using exactly that, and we've only just cottoned on to that as a good negotiating tool.
I mean, that's something we should do definitely with Pakistan.
Just start it straight away. Get on with it, Foreign Office.
Well, we should say that the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, has told The Telegraph following the revelation of this second foreign offender being wrongfully released from prison, being now on the run. This is his statement.
This is another shambles under Calamity Lami's watch. Accidental releases of prisoners have more than doubled under his government, and David Lami doesn't have a clue what's going on. The British people are being put in danger time and time again due to the government's sheer incompetence.
Well, of course, this is a breaking and developing story. A second migrant has been accidentally released from prison, and now a manhunt is being launched for this individual mistakenly released, just days after a sex attack migrant went free as well.
Now, this comes after James Cartledge asked the Deputy Prime Minister 5 times to tell us if another migrant sex offender had been accidentally released from prison. Let's take a listen to the moment this news was announced during Prime Minister's questions.
Mr. Speaker, just to be clear, The Telegraph are reporting that a police manhunt has been launched for a second asylum seeker mistakenly freed from prison. The question is, Mr. Speaker, can you advise me on how I can ask the Justice Secretary whether he was aware of this when I asked him about it repeatedly in Prime Minister's question?
Well, that was at the end of Prime Minister's questions, a point of order from James Cartledge to put it on the record that this is what's happened. Someone who was there in the room watching as those 6 questions were asked at the start of Prime Minister's questions, of course, was our political correspondent, Catherine Forster.
Was it 6 questions, Catherine, that he got?
It was 5 questions.
6 from James Cartledge, 5 of which were on this.
Yes. The first question James Cartledge asked was why David Lami hasn't personally apologised to the family of the 14-year-old girl, the chap who had sexually assaulted her, of course, having been accidentally released. Literally just a few days, as it happens, before this second migrant sex offender. It's worth saying at the moment we don't know. We're being told that he's not believed to be an asylum seeker, though it's not clear if maybe he had been at some point in the future. But certainly he was in jail for trespass with intent to steal, but we understand that he had been previously committed sexual offences of indecent exposure. So we can say a foreign national, a sex offender, again, on our streets.
Very, very important to clarify. They shouldn't leave a little vacuum again. They should clarify very clearly whether or not he's an asylum seeker or whether he's a foreign national who's entered this country legally. Catherine, what do you, listening to all of that and hearing how ridiculous the situation is, David Lami said that he'd created some sort of procedure that was more efficient and this would never happen again. Do we have any detail on what exactly it was that he put in place at all?
I don't have the details in front of me, but I do know that just 2 days after Kabato, the Ethiopian who'd assaulted the 14-year-old in Essex, just 2 days after his accidental release became public, David Lami did announce that there would be enhanced checks on prisoner releases. Now, I don't have the details of the intricacies of what was brought in, but that was designed to make sure it didn't happen again, designed to toughen up the systems in prisons and, of course, to reassure the public, who deserve to go about their business feeling that the government are, looking out for their safety. And yet this as yet unnamed offender was let out accidentally on Wednesday, 29th of October. And yet the police were not informed for nearly a week. It's quite incredible. Of course, a huge political reaction. It's not entirely clear if David Lami knew, but we do know because he said that his officials were working through the night. So I think most people would think it would be surprising if the Justice Secretary, Deputy PM, had not been kept informed. Of course, the Prime Minister himself is flying as we speak to COP in the Amazon. But Number 10 didn't seem to know really in lobby anything about it.
He's flying to COP in the Amazon. He's supposed to be saving the planet.
I do think it's important to drill down on this, though. There are two possibilities, I suppose. One is that David Lami was wearing his deputy prime ministerial hat today, didn't go into the MOJ, did his Prime Minister's questions prep in the morning. He said he picked up a new suit. I mean, he forgot to put on his poppy. I mean, all the rest of it. He was doing his Prime Minister's questions prep. Arguably, he might not have been briefed on his Ministry of Justice brief before PMQs. The other situation that could have happened is he knew exactly what was getting out, but he was hoping that James Cartledge was just fishing for information, and he didn't want to give any more information than Cartledge himself proffered, so obfuscated time and time and time again. Two possibilities.
They're bad either way, though, aren't they?
Yes,
because if he hadn't been briefed and didn't know, that's not good. He is the Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary. He should know, especially after all the furore just a couple of weeks ago. If he did know, I think there's real questions now about... He was asked very specifically, very directly, 5 times, as I wrote down, the same very specific question. And he didn't lie. He obfuscated. He was furious. He blamed the Conservatives. And sure, I think the Conservatives do bear a large responsibility for the fact that the prison system is on its knees, because for 14 years it's been underfunded and so on and so forth.
They built 500 places over 14 years when the population went up by 4 million.
Because it was something that wasn't seen as a priority. But I mean, Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary that David Lami seemed quite disappointed not to be up against, which I thought was quite curious, has tweeted, and he said, another shambles under Calamity Lami's watch. Accidental releases of prisoners have more than doubled under this government. And David Lami doesn't have a clue. Now, I haven't been able to fact-check if that is correct, but that's the allegation from the Shadow Justice Secretary.
The numbers we heard at the start of this programme, brought to us by Charlie Peters, was that in 2023-24, under the previous government, 115 accidental releases, and in 2024-25, under this government, 262 accidental releases. So that's via Charlie Peters, but that would appear to be more than double the number of accidental releases under this government.
Well, then, yes, more than doubling. And not only that, whatever the Tories did or did not do, and David Lami said, they began with the early release programme under the Conservatives. There was speculation that was one of the reasons why Rishi Sunak called the election when he did, because he knew that the jails were getting so full, they were going to have to start releasing prisoners, and how awful would that have looked just before a general election. So it happened that Labour had to take that on. But this is a nightmare for the government, isn't it?
Didn't they have surplus money, though, when they came into power for prisons, because the Conservative hadn't used the money to build the prisons? So I thought they had some, so they could have got on with it straight away. If they knew at the very beginning, which they did, that they'd highlighted repeatedly, surely they could have built... How long does it take to build a prison? They could have at least done something.
It takes a long time, though, doesn't it? I mean, Number 10, in the lobby huddle that Olivia Rutley was at, have firmly tried to put the blame at the door of the Conservatives. They've said, it's clear the chaos that this government has inherited. Well, maybe so, but the thing is, this government have now been in charge well over a year, and they are now responsible, and it's up to them to get on top of this. So
it's political priorities, isn't it? They've had 16 months now. If they got in and immediately said, look, we're going to build a prison and we're going to not abide by all the usual procurement niceties, and we're not going to go through the normal planning setup and you know, we're going to ignore the local council complaints and we're just going to build a prison. They could have done one in the last 16 months.
Exactly.
I suppose it's political will, it's priorities, it's whether or not you're on a war footing.
But also, they've come in and they've announced an awful lot of reviews and studies into this and that, and taking the time. Whereas I think critics will say, well, look, you had 14 years in opposition to sort of work out what you would do when you actually were in power. I mean, for one example would be Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, came in, he announced a big review. We've got the review of social care. That's another way of kicking something very difficult into the long grass. And meanwhile, there's things that were not in the manifesto. Chagos Islands, that wasn't in the Labour manifesto. Assisted dying. OK, it's not party political, but the Prime Minister made a promise to Esther Rantzen. There's a huge Labour majority. And there's been a lot of time and effort expended on these sorts of things that people actually didn't vote for. Whereas I think when Labour promised change, that was the one word. That's what got it for them, that they weren't the Tories. Change. People are impatient to see it, and they feel that it's not happening quick enough. And, you know, in fact, and this just feeds completely into Nigel Farage's narrative that Britain is broken and that continuing with the same old parties is not getting the results.
All right, Catherine Forster, thank you very much. Now, we must say that senior sources have told GBNews the foreign national offender accidentally released from Wandsworth Prison is not believed to be an asylum seeker, but we still wait confirmation of his immigration status. So we'll wait for that and bring it to you.
Well, joining us now is the retired Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville. And Mike, in order for policing to be effective, people need to believe in it. People need to believe in competence. You can't have a police officer on every street. There has to be a societal buy-in to the systems working, to competence across the board. If that societal buy-in breaks down, the job of policing becomes almost impossible.
You're right, and it's a fiasco across the criminal justice system, isn't it? We've got people getting out of prison after 40% of the time, and now we've got people being released who shouldn't be released at all. And it would seem that people are not telling us these things for a week, and you can only think that's to do with political embarrassment or something. And the whole prison system is breaking down, and Wandsworth is infamous, isn't it? It's where Ronnie Biggs escaped from, where Daniel Khalife, the spy, escaped from as well. And now we have this, people say theft with trespass is burglary. He's a burglar who's escaped. And we've got enough burglaries without any more burglars on the street. And as you say, society needs to have rules. It needs to know that if you break the rules, something bad will happen to you. And at the moment, what people are seeing is that the situation is a disgrace. It's a fiasco. The police aren't arresting enough people, and when they do, they're either released from prison early or, by the government or by stupidity.
Mike, if you look at this now, what do you see as the real problem as to why all of this is happening? Because it's just a systematic communication failure across the board. Why do you think all of this is happening?
I think the public sector in particular has been infected by sort of diversity schemes rather than competence schemes. Rather than employing people who are good, they employ people for all sorts of identity politics reasons. And little simple things that you could do. Surely two people should check if somebody's going to be released. Is that simple thing being done? I doubt it. But we're employing all the wrong people. We only have to, every week, there's a story where, you know, a woman prison officer's having sex with a male inmate. And it's just, people think of prisons like, people of my generation, porridge with Mr. Mackay. I'm afraid Mr. Mackay is not in charge anymore because he wouldn't have let this happen.
I mean, it does. Every story we hear about prisons, whether it's mobile phones being flown in via drones, whether it's the creaking and ailing prison estate that is now run amok with drugs, where these prisoners are not having any form of punishment, they're having the time of their lives behind bars. Whether it's having sex with the guards, as you mentioned, or getting high on smuggled drugs, or using the internet on smuggled mobile phones, and then being released accidentally early.
With
at the end of all of that.
With money in their pocket.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? You know, you see lists, or you can have Quavers or Haribo, and absolute madness, isn't it? What happened to porridge? What would you call these days? Haribo or Quavers or something? Our prisons, people are not frightened of going there anymore, and you have gangs running them. We haven't got enough prison officers, we haven't got enough prisons, and often we haven't got the right prison officers. Rather than having some 40-year-old bloke who's been in the armed forces or whatever, we're employing 18-year-olds who can be manipulated, or we're employing people because they fit an agenda. Let's stop doing all this. The country is breaking down, and this is just another symbol of broken Britain, that simple things like keeping people in prison and releasing them on the right day is not working. Who is in charge? Because once again, what we'll see is that no one is punished. Every time these things go wrong, they may sort of discipline some minion at the bottom, but the person in charge, the governor, the people at the Home Office, the Justice Department, none of their heads ever roll, and that's what we need to see happening.
Perhaps David Lami should be the first one to roll. Mike Neville, thank you very much. He's a retired Scotland Yard detective. I didn't expect him to say that, for him to actually home in on DEI. And I think it is... Charlie Kirk referred to that when he talked about flying a plane and seeing someone who's black and saying, well, he doesn't know whether they're a DEI hire. I get it myself. People say, oh, well, you're only the DEI hire because you're on GBNews, that sort of thing. They've stopped doing it now after they've seen some of my monologues. I wrote them myself, by the way. I write them myself. But that's an interesting point that he makes.
I suppose, I mean, I don't... Well, do you find that if there weren't any sort of preferential schemes, people would probably not ask you those questions, right? Like in many ways, you would be more sure of yourself.
Well, I'm quite sure of myself.
Well, no, that's so true. You're the wrong person to ask.
It's those that aren't sure of me.
But
that's the thing. They think that because there's these DEI things that, oh, you're the DEI hire, can you actually write? Are you actually a journalist? I've been doing it for 30 years.
So these schemes can actually undermine you.
Absolutely, they undermine, 100%. And they also undermine the ability of your workforce when you're looking at sort of characteristics. Maybe you want somebody who's trans, you want somebody who's disabled, you want somebody who's black, you want somebody from here. Instead of, can they do the job? What experience do they have?
It's like Ronald Reagan once said, the most damaging, dangerous, scary words in the English language is, hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. It's the idea that these people who are trying to help minorities are actually holding minorities back through the very schemes that they're promoting.
Exactly true. That is exactly true. Well, we can now talk to Pink Lady and activist Sarah White. Sarah, really good to talk to you. Well, here we have it again. Now, we are not sure whether we now know that they are a foreign national, but they're not necessarily asylum seekers, so we can park that. But again, it's somebody who apparently has had sexual offences beforehand, now theft, and has been released or escaped from prison, and we're only told about it a week later, and David Lami appears not to know about it. How do you feel about this?
Well, I just think it's totally insulting for him to say that he doesn't know about it. How does he not know? It's his job to know. And if he doesn't know, then again, why is he doing that job? You know, somebody's got to be held accountable. And like we already know, 262 people got released mistakenly last year alone. That is an excessive amount. One is too many. 262 is just outrageous. Somebody has got to be held accountable. And you're right, the DEI, the world has gone mad now with DEI.
Now, Sarah, the Pink Lady protests kicked off after allegations which then bore out to be true and were confirmed in a court of law of sexual assaults that occurred. It now seems that this individual had a previous conviction for flashing and then was either released and then caught again, it seems, if indeed he went to prison in the first place, for trespassing with intent to steal. This is someone with a repeated criminal record who it seems to be sort of yo-yoing in and out of the criminal justice system.
And we see it too often now, don't we? They've got previous all the time. That, you know, where is the justice system? Why aren't there stronger sentences? Why are they allowed to be released early? The guy that was released early, the one who committed the crimes in Epping the other week, he was then detained, all right, he was deported and then given £500. And let's not forget, people in this country might say £500 isn't a lot of money. That's a year's wages where he's from. So he's just been given a year's wages for nothing, for coming here and sexually assaulting a young girl. It's unacceptable. And when people say that, oh, well, they don't know the crimes in this country are as severe in theirs. In fact, they'll be persecuted in their own countries. So they are fully aware of what they're doing is wrong.
Well, even sometimes, Sarah, they use that very reason after committing the crime here as to why they won't go back, because they'll be in trouble for what they've done here, and they'll be in more trouble when they go back. Sarah White, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. Yeah.
Well, we can now go live to HMP Wandsworth, where our national reporter Charlie Peters is there. And Charlie, I think you have some more breaking news for us.
That's right, Tom and Nana. We're hearing from Ministry of Justice sources this afternoon who've told GB News that David Lami, the Deputy Prime Minister, was informed overnight about this case and was receiving more information today. We're told that he was receiving updates on the case of this 24-year-old Algerian who was accidentally released from the prison behind me, HMP Wandsworth, last week, and that he was receiving, the Deputy Prime Minister, more information about that while he was in the Commons today. Now, justice sources have told GB News that it would have been considered irresponsible for David Lami to have provided an update to the House while he was still gathering information about this highly complex case, which is said to involve multiple agencies, including the Prisons and Probation Service, and of course also the Metropolitan Police. Now, this comes, of course, after David Lami was asked several times by the Shadow Minister, James Cartledge, if any other offenders had been accidentally released, asked about asylum seekers in particular. Now, in this case, the foreign national, the Algerian, we've been told by Home Office sources, is not an asylum seeker, pointing to perhaps some of the complexity that David Lami was still processing as he was being updated on this issue overnight. We heard a statement from David Lami earlier this afternoon describing how his officials were working through the night on this urgent issue. Now, we're also understanding that the Metropolitan Police was only informed about this case yesterday at around 1 p.m. So why he was released from prison accidentally last Wednesday, but the Met was only informed yesterday, that's going to form the centre, I think, of a lot of the focus on this beyond the immediate issue for the Metropolitan Police, which is the manhunt. When it came to that recent appalling controversy of the convicted migrant sex offender Hadush Kibatu, we know that there was an accidental release around 12:45, but that Essex Police had been informed very quickly of, quote, an error, and then had referred the case onto the British Transport Police and the Metropolitan Police, with that manhunt taking 2 days before he was then rearrested in Finsbury Park in North London on the Sunday morning after his accidental release on Friday afternoon. But in this case, Tom and Nana, this foreign sex offender has already been out of this prison behind me for about a week now already, with the Metropolitan Police only being informed yesterday. Now, Mr. Lami said he was absolutely outraged and appalled by the mistaken release of a foreign criminal wanted by the police. And he said that his officials have been working through the night, and we now understand, of course, that he was informed himself of this case. Now, last year, 262 prisoners were accidentally released from March 2024 to 2025. That is a rise on the 115 who were accidentally released in the year prior. So at an average of about 5 a week. It might not seem as something so extraordinary that the Justice Secretary might be informed on every single occasion. But the fact that Hadush Kibatu, the Ethiopian asylum seeker sex offender, had been released early, capturing so much of the public's focus with that shocking case, and now with this 24-year-old Algerian who we understand has previous sexual offences convictions, that has obviously propelled the issue to the forefront of our political focus. And of course, the public want desperately to have some answers on what steps the prison service are taking. David Lami saying that he'd introduced more stringent checks, the most stringent checks since Hadush Kabatu was mistakenly released. But then a matter of days later, it's happened again, this time with this 24-year-old Algerian offender. Now, we've also heard a reaction from David Lami's shadow minister, that's Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, who said this is another shambles under Calamity Lami's watch. Accidental releases of prisoners have more than doubled under this government, and he said that David Lami doesn't have a clue what's going on. He said that the British people are being put in danger time and again due to the government's sheer incompetence. Well, as we said, that accidental release coming as those tighter restrictions, we're told, are being introduced. But clearly, these new restrictions not having the immediate impact that could have been expected. It's possible that there has been a delayed rollout to whatever these new stringent checks might be. We also don't know at this stage the prison sentence for this Algerian offender, what it was and how much time was left on his sentence. But David Lami has now ordered an independent inquiry into Kabatu's release and a new 3-page checklist of new mandatory release measures. So that now requires a prison governor to be physically present when a foreign offender is released. So there'll be tough questions for HMP Wandsworth as they're thrown into the spotlight of this crisis. Was their governor physically present when this 24-year-old Algerian was accidentally released ahead of his sentence being completed? Kabatu's case, of course, would have been at the centre of this new review being launched by Dame Lynn Owens, the former head of the NCA, the National Crime Agency. But now we expect that this 24-year-old case, this Algerian foreign offender, who's understood also to have previous convictions for sexual offences, his case will almost certainly now also form a part of Dame Lynn Owens's review. We've also had a reaction, Tom and Nana, from Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary. He said that the release of another migrant poses danger to the public. He said that this was shocking. He says he needs to urgently confirm if the Ministry of Justice were informed about the release. Well, we have since had that confirmation with his officials working, we're told, overnight. GBNews being informed by Ministry of Justice sources that he was also personally updated last night, was being updated through the night and also gaining more information about this case while he was in the House of Commons today. We understand that could have been including right up until PMQs when he was asked those 5 questions by James Cartledge, the Shadow Minister, on this case. But as the number of releases in error has shot up from 115 to 262, and there have now been 2 high-profile cases of foreign migrant sex offenders facing an early release, it's clear that the Justice Secretary, David Lami, is under intense pressure, but the Prime Minister's spokesperson says he has full confidence in the Minister.
Charlie Peters, thank you very much. Well, let's have a look at David Lami, the Deputy Prime Minister's statement. This is what he said.
I'm absolutely outraged and appalled by the mistaken release of a foreign criminal wanted by the police. The Metropolitan Police is leading an urgent manhunt, and my officials have been working through the night to take him back to prison.
He went on to say victims deserve better and the public deserve answers. That is why I have already brought in the strongest checks ever to clamp down on such failures and ordered an independent investigation led by Dame Lynn Owens to uncover what went wrong and address the rise in accidental releases, which has persisted for too long.
He went on to say this latest incident exposes deeper flaws across the failing criminal justice system we inherited. Dame Lynn Owens' investigation will leave no stone unturned to identify these issues so we can fix them, improve safeguards and ensure the public is properly protected.
And Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick has told The Telegraph.
This is another shambles under Calamity Lami's watch. Accidental releases of prisoners have more than doubled under this government, and David Lami doesn't have a clue what's going on. The British people are being put in danger time and again due to the government's sheer incompetence.
And Nigel Farage, Reform UK's leader, said...
Another dangerous criminal is on the loose thanks to Labour. What a total farce.
Well, joining us now, still in the studio, political correspondent Catherine Forster. So lots of response from all the other leaders. David Lami, in his, once again makes reference to the previous government, as he was sort of saying that the system he inherited.
Yes, and now, as we've heard just from Charlie Peters, an admission that David Lami did know right through Prime Minister's questions, which totally explains why he said everything other than answering the question. And also, he was visibly furious. I thought it was an incredibly bad-tempered. I mean, it always can get feisty, but he was really, really livid. And I guess because he knew what an incredibly difficult place the government were in. Now, the defence that they have given is said, you know, he was spoken to about this last night. They've been working through the night, new information. He felt it would be irresponsible when they sort of hadn't got all their ducks in a row to divulge this at Prime Minister's question. So that is the explanation. But look, this happened just 2 days after these key measures, these toughened checks, had supposed to be brought in following the release of Kibatu, you know, after the being jailed for the assault of the 14-year-old girl. And I was just looking at what those enhanced checks are. Mandatory use of a checklist, a new 5-page checklist must be completed for every release. Senior staff sign off, so the duty governor personally responsible for expecting and signing off the release checklist. That was previously done by someone more junior. And physical presence for deportation cases for foreign national offenders being released under the early removal scheme, the duty governor being physically present. Other measures too. So it sounded like this would make a difference. And I have to say, I wonder, in this case, HMP Wandsworth, was it simply the case that because these were so new that they hadn't been implemented? Because the whole point of this checklist is to stop this happening. So many unanswered questions. We know now that this man was not an asylum seeker, but so many unanswered questions. And of course, top of the list being, where is this man now? We know he was jailed for trespass with intent to steal. We know he had previously committed sexual offences. Indecent exposure is our understanding. But where is he? I mean, he could be anywhere. And the fact that he was out for nearly a week before the Met Police even knew.
Well, I win the bet, Tom.
Yeah, you do.
I told you. I said David Lami knew. I could see by the way he was behaving, the way he was adamant, the way he turned it into an aggressive thing to try and deflect from himself. To me, his body language and the tone of his voice, I knew that he knew.
And what a bad choice as well. I mean, Catherine, do you think that there's a world in which David Lami could have answered that second question that James Cartledge came with, you know, has anyone else? Is there a world in which he could say, look, I've been briefed about something last night. It's not appropriate to give all the details now, but I will make a further statement to the House in due course. I mean, he could have said that and shut the issue down from his perspective without this sort of Damocles hanging over Prime Minister's questions for the rest of the session.
I guess he could. With the benefit of hindsight, that might have been a better move. Of course, James Cartledge would have still questioned and questioned. But I think they were wrong-footed because they obviously knew this was in the ether. They would have known that it was going to come out at some point. I guess they were hoping to get on top of it before that happened. But clearly the Conservatives and James Cartledge knew about it and knew that the news was about to drop, as indeed it did, right at the end of PMQs. But I did think David Lami, I would say, it was not his finest hour. He was visibly furious. But at the end of the day, for all the Tories' failures, the underfunding of prisons that's gone on for so long, the buck stops with the current government. And you know, he is the Deputy PM and the Justice Secretary. And as Charlie Peters has said, accidental release has more than doubled under this government.
Well, Catherine, stay with us because we're going to take a look at what on earth went on during Prime Minister's questions when, of course, the Defence Secretary James Cartledge, deputising for Kemi Badenoch today, he repeatedly questioned David Lami on whether any other asylum seeker had been mistakenly released from prison since Hadash Kibatu. Let's take a listen.
Can he reassure the House that since Kibatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison.
Of course I apologise, and I'm sorry.
I'm going to ask him the question again. Can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison? It's a very specific question for him to answer.
I put in place the toughest checks we've ever had in the prison system.
Can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison?
I know I'm the Justice Secretary, that's why I'm at the dispatch box, also as Deputy Prime Minister.
Can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison?
I've got to tell you, I spent 14 years in opposition, and I did a hell of a lot better than he's just done.
Since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison. Can he answer the question?
I'm looking forward to being up against the member for Newark next time.
See, so he used the word asylum-seeking offender, but this person is allegedly a foreign national. So we'll get more clarity. But as we know, they are a foreign national.
Yeah, and we don't know if they've ever been an asylum seeker. It could be someone. There is a lot that we still don't know about this story that is constantly developing, but we should say, after that exchange that we just saw a supercut of, at the end of Prime Minister's questions, this happened.
Speaker, just to be clear, the Telegraph are reporting that a police manhunt has been launched for a second asylum seeker mistakenly freed from prison. The question is, Mr. Speaker, can you advise me on how I can ask the Justice Secretary whether he was aware of this when I asked him about it repeatedly in Prime Minister's question?
So that happened at the end, and so isn't that one of those questions that they have now?
A point of order.
A point of order.
So the point of order is brought forward. He wasn't able to ask a question directly of the Deputy Prime Minister. The form of words he used was, Mr. Speaker, can you advise how I might ask the Deputy Prime Minister? And then sneaking in the question there so everyone understood what he meant and so that it was put on the record. But you can bring a point of order at the end of the session.
All right, cool. OK, so then we have it. You see, the Oracle, he knows everything, all about that. So listen, Catherine, of course, is still joining us. Catherine, again, we'll just highlight the fact that he used the word asylum-seeking offender, asylum-seeking offender.
Yes, I was really struck watching it back because, I sit in PMQs every week and I'd never seen anything like this. First of all, we'd all thought they'd talk about the economy, the budget, and say, what's going on? And it all makes sense. But yes, James Cartledge used very specific words, and he used the word asylum-seeking. Yeah. And now we are told that this migrant sex offender, we know that, is not an asylum seeker. We don't know more than that. And I don't suppose that precludes the fact that he might possibly have been and been granted
seeking.
Yeah,
so he could have been in the past.
Seeking asylum.
He's not an asylum seeker now. Yeah. But does that mean that he might have been an asylum seeker in the past and been granted asylum? We simply don't know. We simply don't know. I suppose David Lami could have said no. Because technically be true, but I think then he would have been in a lot of trouble. He'd be accused of misleading the House. So you can understand why he did obfuscate. But
yes, but he could have said, look, the honourable gentleman raises an important and concerning point. The Home Office is trying to establish the facts on this. We don't believe that an asylum seeker has, but we have heard concerning reports overnight and we'll update the House in due course. I mean, it's not beyond the wit of man to come up with a response that actually answers the question rather than just avoids the question.
He's not that clever.
No, it's not. And also, it's just extraordinary. The government today would like to be talking about, there's been Charlie Mayfield's done a review about supporting people at work, making sure that people stay at work, don't fall out of the jobs market. They want to talk about nationalisation of the railway. They want to talk about the new education curriculum. Parliament goes into recess for a very short break tomorrow. They've got all these announcements, all these things that the government wants to say, look at this, we're doing this here, we're doing this here, we're trying to deliver for you. None of that is getting any airtime because, yet again, we're talking about a story that really falls into the you couldn't make it up category. And this is now the third. We've had this one, we've had Kabatu, and we've had the one in, one out. Who came straight back in. These crazy stories that increasingly make people think our taxes are going up again. We're not feeling any improvements. Public services are on their knees and the government can't even keep people in prison. I mean, sure, there's blame on previous governments, but this is catastrophic for the government. They cannot catch a break.
HMS Britain is a very leaky ship. We've been pressed low into the waterline, and every time the government thinks they've plugged one gap with their hands and plugged one leak, another one springs up behind them, and then there's just water spraying all over the place.
Or the ship sinks further and more water goes in through the windows.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. Pick your own metaphor, but it does feel like the country is sinking.
And the Prime Minister is on a flight to COP in the Amazon. Of course, they've had to cut down a lot of trees to put the road to that, but a very brief trip. But, you know, he is out of the country. This government came back in September. They talked about the second phase of government and they immediately lurched into a crisis with Angela Rayner, Peter Mandelson. We've had the Chinese spy trial collapse. It just feels like a catalogue of catastrophes, one after the other.
Well, they kicked it off with Freebiegate, having told us all how there's going to be integrity, and you had Carol Vorderman going, and what's her name from Sky News, Kay Burley, making all those weird noises when the Labour government came into power, how this was going to change, and the word change was bandied about. The grown-ups are here. Hardly.
Yeah, the change. I mean, it just feels a very long time ago, doesn't it? And here, you know, this morning, we would have thought we'd be talking about 2p on income tax that we're quite possibly expecting.
Which
the
is
news
another
agenda
huge story.
Of course it is. She's about to break a manifesto promise.
I went into PMQs fully expecting it to be about the economy. And then the first question, I thought, where's this going? And then I was like, is he really going to use every question on this? And now we know why. But more details are going to emerge. But meanwhile, there's going to be another massive manhunt, and people will feel that the government is failing in the very most basic duty of government to keep people safe.
Well, Catherine Forster, thank you very much indeed for that summary. Let's go now to the scene of the disaster itself.
Yes, joining us outside HMP Wandsworth is GBNews' national reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, what more can you tell us?
Well, Nana and Tom, we've heard from Ministry of Justice sources in the last hour confirming that the Justice Secretary, David Lami, was informed about this 24-year-old Algerian migrant, we're told also sex offender, being informed of his accidental early release last week. Now, the Metropolitan Police were not aware of that accidental release until yesterday afternoon, which is then when Ministry of Justice officials were informed. We're also told that those officials were working through the night in what Justice sources said was a complex and multi-agency investigation involving now the Metropolitan Police and also the Prisons and Probation Service and also other agencies within government. We've been told by senior sources that this 24-year-old Algerian is not an asylum seeker, categorically not an asylum seeker, which of course was the immigration status of Hadush Kibatu, the migrant sex offender from Ethiopia who was convicted at Chelmsford Magistrates Court for sexually assaulting a woman and a 14-year-old girl. His accidental early release sparked a manhunt by Essex Police, British Transport Police and the Metropolitan Police. Now, with this accidental early release of another foreign sex offender, though this one is not, we're told, an asylum seeker, the Metropolitan Police once again are hunting for an accidental early release prisoner in the capital. And because that early release took place last week, the opportunities and the potential range that he could have travelled is so much greater than was with the case with Hadush Kibatu, that Ethiopian, of course, being captured on the Sunday morning at Finsbury Park, less than 48 hours after that mistaken release from HMP Chelmsford. Well, here at HMP Wandsworth, where this Algerian offender was released accidentally, there is going to be, we expect, an investigation into that error, as we're hearing about Dame Lynn Owens, former head of the NCA, taking part in that inquiry launched by David Lami, the Justice Secretary, in light of the Kibatu early release. Now, David Lami did say, before news broke about this early release, that stringent checks had been put in place, the most stringent checks, including a prison governor, the head of each prison, needing to be present if a prisoner was going through early release. And this prisoner, this Algerian, the 24-year-old, is not only, we understand, was meant to be spending time behind bars for trespass with intent to steal, but also has previously committed a sexual offence of indecent exposure. We don't know if he was imprisoned or spent any time in custody for that offence, but it would have formed part of his sentencing, with the judge taking that into account when he was imprisoned for the more recent offence of trespass with intent to steal. Now, what justice sources were telling us that David Lami was informed last night and overnight about this case is, of course, very relevant, because James Cartledge, the shadow Home Office Minister, was challenging David Lami at PMQs earlier today 5 times about whether he was aware of any other migrant early releases, with David Lami not directly answering that question. We're now told that David Lami was aware of this recent accidental early release, but due to the complex nature of the case and also the fact that he was still receiving information overnight, and also, we understand, while he was in the Commons, he thought that it would be too complex and also potentially difficult to explain to the House while he was still receiving updates on that complex situation. That's what justice sources are telling us. But that comes after the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, urged David Lami to go on the record about when he knew. Now, Mr. Lami has later said after PMQs that he was absolutely outraged and appalled by the mistaken release, adding that his officials had been working through the night, as we've previously said. Of a special focus, of course, on this issue is that with Hadush Kibatu, we also learnt that he was paid £500 as part of that deportation, pointing to recent stresses and strains that the state has been under with deportation of foreign offenders, adding to the general sense that the Prison and Probation Service and the Home Office have been struggling to deal with foreign offenders. The Metropolitan Police now engaging in that urgent manhunt for a 24-year-old Algerian sex offender who was accidentally released from this prison a week ago.
Well, Charlie Peters, thank you very much indeed for giving us the very latest there outside HMP Wandsworth, where, of course, this disaster unfolded.
Right, well, in case you missed it, the breaking news at PMQ's Shadow Defence Secretary James Cartledge repeatedly questioned David Lami on whether any other asylum seeker had been mistakenly released from prison since Hadush Kibatu. Take a listen.
Can he reassure the House that since Kibatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison?
Of course I apologise, and I'm sorry.
I'm going to ask him the question again. Can he reassure the House that since Kibatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison? It's a very specific question for him to answer.
I put in place the toughest checks we've ever had in the prison system.
Can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison.
I know I'm the Justice Secretary, that's why I'm at the dispatch box, also as Deputy Prime Minister.
Can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison?
I've got to tell you, I spent 14 years in opposition and I did a hell of a lot better than he's just done.
Since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison. Can he answer the question?
I'm looking forward to being up against the member for Newark next time.
Well, of course, that was David Lami responding to James Cartledge. But 20 or so minutes later, the news broke. This is how it was delivered to the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, just to be clear, the Telegraph are reporting that a police manhunt has been launched for a second asylum seeker mistakenly freed from prison. The question is, Mr. Speaker, can you advise me on how I can ask the Justice Secretary whether he was aware of this when I asked him about it repeatedly in Prime Minister's question?
So the Deputy Prime Minister, David Lami, said this in response to all of that.
I'm absolutely outraged and appalled by the mistaken release of a foreign criminal wanted by the police. The Metropolitan Police is leading an urgent manhunt and my officials have been working through the night to take him back to prison.
He also went on to say victims deserve better and the public deserve answers. That is why I have already brought in the strongest checks ever to clamp down on such failures and ordered an independent investigation led by Dame Lynn Owens to uncover what went wrong and address the rise in accidental releases, which has persisted for too long.
This latest incident exposes deeper flaws across the failing criminal justice system we inherited. Dame Lynn Owens' investigation will leave no stone unturned to identify these issues so we can fix them, improve safeguards and ensure the public is properly protected.
Yes, everything's always inherited, isn't it? It really is. And Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick has told The Telegraph.
This is another shambles under Calamity Lami's watch. Accidental releases of prisoners have more than doubled under this government, and David Lami doesn't have a clue what's going on. The British people are being put in danger time and time again due to the government's sheer incompetence.
But then there were also comments from Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp, who said,
"It's shocking that once again the Labour government has mistakenly allowed a foreign criminal to be released from prison."
The Algerian offender reportedly has previous sex attack convictions and is clearly a danger to the public. This comes hot on the heels of the mistaken release of Ethiopian sex offender Haidish Kabati.
He continued, Justice Secretary David Lami refused to answer 5 times at Prime Minister's questions today whether any further foreign prisoners were recently released mistakenly.
He continued, Mr Lami needs to urgently confirm if the Ministry of Justice were informed about the release and if he personally knew about it before PMQs. This makes a mockery of Lami's claims at PMQs to have introduced the strongest checks ever on release.
He added, in my view, all foreign criminals should be automatically deported at the end of their sentence. We will need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights to do that, but the Labour government is too weak.
Although that's slightly ironic because they could have done it and they didn't, did they? And Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has said.
Another dangerous criminal is on the loose thanks to Labour. What a total farce.
Joining us now, still in the studio, political correspondent Catherine Forster. And of course, since Chris Philp made that comment, we have learnt that David Lami did know about this before PMQs.
Yes, we have learnt that he was briefed about it last night and then being briefed on developments up until pretty much the beginning of Prime Minister's questions. Now, the reason that's been given for why he didn't answer that question 5 times was that he thought with everything ongoing it wouldn't be appropriate. We're also hearing that he thought it was the proper way to do it would be the Met Police to make a statement, that it wasn't for him to sort of predate. And, of course, we did get that Met Police statement shortly after the story broke. But, look, I think there are pretty serious questions for David Lami now, because he didn't lie, but he deflected and did not answer a question 5 times. Now, James Cartledge said asylum-seeking person. We are told that this man, we know he's a foreign national. We know he was in jail for trespass with intent to steal, but we know he'd previously committed sexual offences. But we're now hearing that he was not an asylum seeker. But this is the most horrendous look for this government, because it falls absolutely into the you couldn't make this up category of seeming utter and total incompetence. You know, it's only a couple of weeks since Hadish Kabatu, the man that had sexually assaulted the 14-year-old girl in Essex, had been released, and there were supposed to be, we were told, these enhanced checks that were coming in just 2 days after David Lami announced those checks. This new migrant has somehow managed to escape.
Catherine, it is just an extraordinary story. Thank you indeed for being here and covering it all. Let's get some more now with the former Detective Chief Inspector, Dave McKelvey. Dave, with Hadish Kabatu, there was a photograph of the man published. The public could help, frankly, with the manhunt, with the investigation. Would you consider that something similar might happen in this case?
I mean, they can do. It depends on how serious an individual or how much danger and risk he presents to the public. But obviously, the team that will be investigating this will have all sorts of technology available to them, and you would hope that as a result of that, they will be able to find him fairly quickly.
Well, you would think, though, that they could at least release the image, though. I don't really understand why they wouldn't, so that we can all be aware. And as with Hadish Kabatu, it was the public who solved the sort of where he was, ultimately. So I'm just not understanding why they don't just get on with showing us what he looks like, unless they're trying to cover something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you. As you're aware, it was the public that resolved that one, and you would hope that if they were to release a photograph, you'd have a similar result very quickly. But you've got to appreciate this is. I think the figures were 226 so far this year, similar type releases.
262. 262 is more than that. Yeah.
Wow.
Even worse.
You can't release a photograph every single time they, release by mistake a prisoner. You've got to focus on those that that are the most risk to the public.
Almost one a day.
Dave, before we let you go, David Lami, the Justice Secretary, has said an urgent manhunt is now underway. What will the police be doing?
I assume that they'll assign a specialist crime team to investigate, to obviously try and track the phone, look at facial recognition cameras, etc., etc. Go behind, speak to friends, family, etc. Try and identify where he is. And you would hope on the back of that they will find him. But this just keeps happening, and it's a mess. It's a complete. And of course, whilst they're doing that, you've got a specialist crime team that should be doing other criminality, or investigating other criminality, guns and drugs and major drugs offences. And so you're taking away, specialist officers to do something that's costing a fortune, and you're taking them away from what they do on as a day job. Effectively, it's a complete and utter mess.
All right, Dave McKelvey, thank you very much. As a former Detective Chief Inspector, do you know, I've worked it out that it's a prisoner released by accident every day during the week, minus the weekends. Pretty much.
What a joyous note to end on. But do not switch off your set, because Martin Daubney will ably be continuing the coverage of this breaking and developing news story. Of course, a migrant accidentally released after being convicted.
He's not a migrant.
He is a migrant.
A British national. No, a foreign national.
Foreign national.
Not a migrant.
Well, Martin's next.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It is an exceptionally mild bonfire night for most of us. Rain in some places, particularly Scotland and Northern Ireland, but for many parts of the UK it is actually drier than the last few days. That's because we're in between systems. We've got low pressure still sitting to the south, maintaining this mild southerly breeze, but it's tending to push the rain into Scotland and Northern Ireland, and even where the rain ends up, there will be some gaps in the cloud and the rain, so not raining all evening. A few bits and bobs of rain out towards the far west, otherwise mostly dry with clear spells for bonfire night, and by the time we get to dawn, even at this stage, temperatures are still in the teens fairly widely across the country, so certainly not a cold night. And as we start off Thursday, yes, a lot of cloud cover around, but there will be some sunny spells in one or two spots, particularly northeast Scotland, for example. Outbreaks of rain at this stage clearing Shetland, staying damp through central and western Scotland, but the rain on and off, likewise for Northern Ireland. A few light showers, but a lot of dry weather as well, despite the largely cloudy skies. We've got some more showers developing during the morning across England and Wales, especially West Wales, parts of Cornwall, where there will be some heavy downpours starting to emerge, and an area of showers pushing through parts of the Midlands, the south and southeast of England. So Thursday is a day of mixed weather, but it's not as wet as previous days. There is a lot of dry and fine weather out there, plenty of sunshine in the east and some emerging sunshine into the southwest as well as parts of Wales. In between a few showers, but it's another